Picture this. You're sitting in the finest restaurant in the city, candlelight flickering across white tablecloths, champagne chilling in silver buckets. It's your 25th birthday. The man you've loved for 3 years is about to propose. You can feel it. Everyone can feel it. The entire room is watching, and then he stands up, looks you dead in the eye, and says the words that will shatter your world into 1,000 pieces. But here's the twist. That humiliation, that public destruction of everything you thought you knew, it wasn't the end of Lena Harrow's story. It was just the beginning. Stay with me until the very end of this journey, because what happens next will blow your mind. Hit that like button, drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from, and let's dive into a tale of betrayal, transformation, and a power so ancient that kingdoms have fallen trying to possess it. This is the story of how a broken-hearted woman became a legendary queen. The Palomar restaurant sat perched on the 32nd floor of the Ashton Tower like a jewel box suspended in the night sky. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the capital city, a glittering sprawl of lights that stretched to the horizon, where the dark shapes of mountains rose against the starlit sky. Inside, crystal chandeliers cast prismatic rainbows across tables draped in cream-colored linen. The soft murmur of refined conversation mixed with the gentle clinking of silverware against bone china. Lena Harrow sat at table 17, her fingers nervously smoothing the napkin in her lap for the 100th time. She wore the midnight blue dress she'd spent 2 months' salary on, the one with the delicate silver embroidery along the neckline that Marcus had once said made her eyes look like the ocean. Her dark hair was swept up in an elegant twist, secured with the pearl pins her mother had given her before she died. On her left wrist, a simple silver bracelet caught the light. It had been a gift from Marcus on their first anniversary. 3 years. 3 years of patient waiting, of understanding when he worked late, of supporting his ambitions, of being the steady, reliable presence in his increasingly busy life. Tonight was supposed to be different. Tonight was her birthday, her 25th, and Marcus had insisted on the Palomar, even though she'd suggested somewhere more modest. He'd made the reservation months ago. He'd told her to wear something special. He'd been acting strange all week, secretive, distracted, nervous in a way that made her heart race with anticipation. Across from her, Marcus Bradford checked his phone for the 3rd time in 5 minutes. His jaw was tight, his eyes distant. He wore the charcoal suit she'd helped him pick out for his last promotion, but he'd barely looked at her since they sat down. "Marcus?" Lena's voice was soft, uncertain. "Is everything okay? You seem... I need to tell you something." The words came out flat, rehearsed. Marcus set his phone face down on the table with deliberate precision. His blue eyes finally met hers, and what Lena saw there made her stomach drop. It wasn't nervousness, it wasn't excitement, it was pity. "Lena, these past 3 years have been comfortable." Marcus cleared his throat, straightening his tie. Around them, the ambient noise of the restaurant seemed to fade, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. "You've been exactly what I needed during a difficult phase of my career. Supportive, undemanding, predictable, comfortable, undemanding, predictable." The words landed like stones in still water, each one sending ripples of cold realization through Lena's chest. "But I've been doing a lot of thinking lately," Marcus continued, his tone taking on the same measured quality he used in business presentations. "About where I'm going, about the kind of life I want, the kind of partner I need moving forward." Lena's hands were trembling now. She pressed them flat against her thighs under the table, willing herself to stay calm, to breathe. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that you're a wonderful person, Lena. Sweet, loyal, safe, Marcus paused, and in that pause, Lena heard the executioner's blade sliding from its sheath. "But I need someone who challenges me. Someone with ambition. Someone who can stand beside me as I build something extraordinary, not just support from the sidelines." The restaurant tilted slightly. Lena gripped the edge of the table. "I don't understand," she whispered. Tonight, I thought you were going to propose?" Marcus actually laughed, a short, bitter sound that cut through her like broken glass. "Lena, be honest with yourself. You work as a filing clerk at a medical office. You spend your weekends reading novels and taking care of your father's garden. You've never traveled anywhere interesting, never taken a risk in your life. Your comfortable shoes, Lena. Reliable. Boring. Each word was a carefully placed knife. Lena could feel eyes turning toward their table now. The couple at table 15 had stopped mid-conversation. The waiter approaching with their appetizers had frozen 3 feet away, uncertainty written across his face. "Marcus, please?" Lena hated how small her voice sounded. "Can we talk about this somewhere private? This isn't private." Marcus's voice rose slightly, and now there was no mistaking the attention they were drawing. A woman in a red dress at the bar had turned completely around on her stool. "Why? So you can try to change my mind? So you can cry and make promises about becoming someone you're not?" Lena felt heat creeping up her neck, flooding her cheeks. Tears were building behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "Not here. Not in front of all these people." "I've already made my decision," Marcus said, and now his voice carried across the restaurant like he wanted everyone to hear. "I'm done settling. I'm done with safe and predictable. I'm done with you." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the kitchen seemed to have gone quiet. Lena sat frozen, her entire body locked in place by the weight of public humiliation. She wanted to stand up, to walk out with her head held high, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. She wanted to scream at him, to demand why he'd chosen this place, this night, her birthday, but her voice had abandoned her. Marcus stood up, smoothing his jacket with practiced efficiency. He pulled his wallet from his pocket and dropped $300 bills on the table, enough to cover the meal they would never eat, enough to serve as a final, insulting gesture of his superiority. "Happy birthday, Lena," he said, and the pity in his voice was worse than the cruelty had been. "I hope you find someone who's satisfied with ordinary." He turned to leave, and that's when Lena saw her. Natasha Verne stood near the entrance, partially hidden behind a marble column. She wore a dress that probably cost more than Lena's monthly rent, crimson silk that hugged every curve like it had been painted on. Her platinum blonde hair fell in perfect waves over her shoulders. She was Marcus's new assistant, the one he'd hired 6 months ago, the one he'd sworn was just professional. As Marcus reached her, Natasha smiled, the kind of smile that said she'd been waiting, that she'd known this was coming, that she'd probably helped plan it. Marcus's hand found the small of her back with the ease of long familiarity, and they walked out together without looking back. The restaurant remained silent for another 5 seconds that felt like 5 years. Then the whisper started. "Did you see? On her birthday. How awful. Who does that in public?" Lena finally managed to move. Her hand reached for her water glass, but her fingers were shaking so badly that she knocked it over instead. Ice water spread across the white tablecloth like a stain, like evidence, like shame made visible. "Miss?" The waiter had appeared at her elbow, his face a mask of professional sympathy that somehow made everything worse. "Would you like me to—" "I'm fine." The words came out strangled. Lena stood up so fast her chair scraped loudly against the floor. Every eye in the restaurant was on her. She could feel their pity like a physical weight pressing down on her shoulders. "I'm perfectly fine." She wasn't fine. She was dying inside, drowning in front of an audience that would probably turn this into a story they told at dinner parties. "Did you hear about that poor girl at the Palomar?" On her birthday. "Can you imagine?" Lena grabbed her purse and turned toward the exit, desperate to escape before the tears she'd been holding back finally broke free. She made it exactly 3 steps before the pain hit. It started in her left shoulder, the spot where a strange, crescent-shaped mark had appeared 3 months ago. She'd assumed it was a birthmark she'd somehow never noticed, or maybe a reaction to the new laundry detergent she'd been using. Her doctor had found nothing wrong with it, told her not to worry. But now it was burning. Not the surface heat of a sunburn or the sting of a scratch. This was deeper, as if something beneath her skin had suddenly ignited. Lena gasped and pressed her hand to her shoulder, feeling the mark pulse beneath her fingers like a second heartbeat. The room swayed. She stumbled, catching herself against the back of an empty chair. "Miss, are you all right?" A different waiter now, younger, genuinely concerned. "Should I call someone? Do you need medical—" "I just need air," Lena managed. The burning was spreading now, radiating down her arm and across her chest. Sweat broke out on her forehead despite the restaurant's perfect climate control. "I need to get outside." She pushed past the waiter and made it to the elevator bank in the hallway beyond the dining room. Her vision was starting to blur at the edges. The mark on her shoulder felt like it was trying to tear itself free of her body. What was happening to her? The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, and Lena stumbled inside, slapping the button for the ground floor. As the doors began to close, she caught a glimpse of herself in the mirrored wall, pale, sweating, eyes wide with pain and confusion. And then she saw something else. For just a fraction of a second, her eyes flashed silver, not the gray of storm clouds, but pure luminous silver like molten moonlight. Lena blinked, and they were normal again. Brown, ordinary, human. She must be losing her mind. The humiliation, the pain, the stress, it was all too much. She was hallucinating. The elevator began its descent, and Lena leaned against the wall, trying to breathe through the burning agony in her shoulder. 32 floors had never seemed so far. When the doors finally opened onto the building's lobby, Lena practically fell out. The security guard at the desk looked up in alarm, but she waved him off and staggered toward the exit. The cool night air hit her face like a blessing as she pushed through the revolving door and out onto the sidewalk. The capital's downtown district was alive even at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday. Cars streamed past in rivers of white and red lights. Pedestrians clustered at crosswalks, laughed outside theaters, queued for late-night food trucks. The normalcy of it all felt surreal. How could the world just continue turning when Lena's had just imploded? She leaned against the building's facade, gulping air, trying to calm the fire spreading through her body. People gave her a wide berth, just another drunk girl outside a fancy restaurant, probably. Nothing to see here. You need to sit down before you fall down. The voice came from her left, deep, measured, with an edge of command that made it impossible to ignore. Lena turned her head and found herself looking at a man who definitely hadn't been there a moment ago. He was tall, easily 6'3", with broad shoulders that filled out his black coat like he'd been carved from stone. His hair was dark, almost black, pushed back from a face that could have been chiseled from marble, all sharp angles and severe lines. But it was his eyes that stopped Lena's breath in her throat. They were gray. Not the muddy gray-blue of Marcus's eyes, but the pure, depthless gray of a storm about to break. And they were looking at her with an intensity that made her feel like he could see straight through her skin to whatever was burning beneath. "I'm fine," Lena said automatically, even though she very clearly wasn't. The mark on her shoulder pulsed again, and she bit back a gasp. "No." The man stepped closer, and Lena caught a scent like pine forest and winter rain. "You're not. And in about 3 minutes, you're going to be a lot worse. Come with me. Now." There was something in his voice, not a threat, but an absolute certainty that bypassed every self-preservation instinct Lena possessed. She should tell this stranger to leave her alone. She should call someone, get a taxi, go home and lock her door. Instead, she heard herself say, "Who are you?" "Someone who can help." The man's hand closed around her upper arm, not roughly, but firmly enough that she felt the strength in his grip. "There's a place nearby, quiet, private. We need to get you there before the change begins." "Change?" Lena's voice was barely a whisper. "What are you talking about? What change?" The man's gray eyes flashed with something that might have been sympathy. "The one your body has been trying to trigger for 3 months. The one that mark on your shoulder has been building toward. The one that's going to happen tonight whether you're ready or not." Lena's blood turned to ice. "How do you know about the mark? I haven't told anyone. Because I can smell it on you." The man started walking, pulling her gently but inexorably along the sidewalk. "The silver in your blood. The wolf trying to wake up. And because every supernatural creature within a mile radius can feel it too. So unless you want to attract a lot of very dangerous attention, we need to move. Now." Wolf. Silver blood. Supernatural creatures. This man was insane. Lena tried to pull away, but another wave of burning pain ripped through her shoulder and down her spine, so intense that she actually cried out. Her knees buckled, and only the stranger's grip kept her upright. "Easy," he said, his voice softening slightly. "I know it hurts. I know you don't understand, but I'm going to get you somewhere safe, and then I'll explain everything. You have my word." Lena wanted to argue, to run, to do anything except trust a stranger who talked about wolves and silver blood like they were real things. But the pain was getting worse with every passing second, and she could feel something shifting beneath her skin, something that wanted out. "Okay," she gasped. "Okay. Where are we going?" "The Sterling Inn, 10 blocks north. Can you walk?" Lena nodded, even though she wasn't sure. The stranger kept his hand on her arm as they started moving up the sidewalk at a pace just shy of running. Around them, the city blurred into streaks of light and shadow. Lena's entire world had narrowed to the burning in her shoulder, the stranger's steadying grip, and the growing certainty that her life, the ordinary, predictable, comfortable life that Marcus had just destroyed, was never coming back. They made it 4 blocks before Lena's legs finally gave out. She collapsed against a storefront window, panting, her entire body shaking. The mark on her shoulder was molten now, and she could feel it spreading, lines of fire tracing patterns across her back, down her arms, burning beneath her skin like a map written in pain. "Not much further," the stranger said, but there was urgency in his voice now. He pulled out a phone and tapped something quickly. "We're not going to make it to the inn. I'm calling a car." "What's happening to me?" Lena's voice broke on the question. "Please, I don't understand any of this. Tonight was supposed to be, I was supposed to get proposed to by an idiot who couldn't see what he had?" The stranger's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "I was there, at the restaurant, table 22, by the window." Lena stared at him. "You saw everything." He crouched down so they were eye level, those storm gray eyes locked on hers. And for what it's worth, he was wrong about all of it. "You're not ordinary, Lena Harrow. You never were." "How do you know my name?" "Because I've been watching you for 3 weeks, waiting for this night, waiting for the mark to complete, waiting for you to finally become what you were always meant to be." A black car pulled up to the curb, sleek, expensive, with windows tinted so dark they looked like solid obsidian. The rear door opened from the inside, and the stranger lifted Lena like she weighed nothing, sliding her into the back seat before following her in. "The old inn on Crescent Street," he told the driver. "Fast." The car pulled away from the curb with barely a sound, acceleration pressing Lena back into leather seats that probably cost more than her entire apartment. She tried to focus on her breathing, on staying conscious, but the pain was overwhelming now. It felt like her bones were trying to reshape themselves, like her skin was too small for whatever was growing inside it. "What's your name?" she managed to ask through gritted teeth. The stranger looked at her for a long moment, as if deciding whether to answer. Finally, he said, Kyle Varin." "And what do you want from me, Kyle Varin?" His gray eyes softened with something that might have been regret. "To save your life. To save you from people who want to use what you are. And maybe," he paused, "maybe to ask your forgiveness for not finding you sooner." Before Lena could ask what he meant, another wave of agony crashed through her, so intense that her vision went white. She heard herself scream, heard Kyle's voice sharp with command, heard the car engine roar as they accelerated through the city's streets. And through it all, the mark on her shoulder burned like a brand, like a promise, like a door opening onto a world she'd never known existed, a world that was about to swallow her whole. The car screeched to a stop in an alley behind a building that looked like it had been forgotten by time itself. Lena was barely conscious now, her body racked with tremors, sweat soaking through her expensive dress. Cale lifted her out of the car and carried her toward a door that looked like it hadn't been opened in decades. "Hold on," he said, his voice the only solid thing in a world that had become liquid and unstable. "Just a little longer. Hold on, Lena." But Lena didn't know if she could. The burning had become everything, her entire existence reduced to fire and pain and the terrifying sensation that she was being torn apart from the inside out. As Kyle kicked open the door and carried her into darkness, Lena's last coherent thought was a question. What am I becoming? The answer would change everything. The door slammed shut behind them, cutting off the sounds of the city like a blade. Lena's senses were fracturing, the world reduced to fragments of sensation that made no sense together. The musty smell of abandonment, the distant drip of water somewhere in the darkness, Kyle's steady heartbeat beneath her ear as he carried her deeper into the building, and the pain, always the pain, spreading like wildfire through every nerve. "Almost there," Kyle said, his voice vibrating through his chest. "Stay with me, Lena." She tried to answer, but only managed to whimper. Her fingers clutched at his coat, nails digging into the fabric as another wave of agony crashed through her bones. It felt like her skeleton was trying to rearrange itself, like her muscles were tearing and reforming with each breath. Cale kicked open another door, and suddenly there was light, dim and flickering, but enough for Lena to make out the space he'd brought her to. It had once been a hotel room, she thought, though decades of neglect had stripped away most of its former elegance. Faded wallpaper peeled from the walls in long strips. A single bed frame sat against the far wall, its mattress long gone. Broken glass from the shattered window crunched under Kael's boots. But someone had prepared this room recently. Heavy blankets were spread across the floor in the corner farthest from the window. Bottles of water lined the wall, and covering the broken window was a thick sheet of metal that blocked out the city lights. Kael lowered Lena onto the blankets as gently as he could, but even that small movement made her cry out. She curled onto her side, every muscle locked tight, tears streaming down her face. "I know," Kael said, crouching beside her. His hand brushed sweat-soaked hair back from her forehead. "I know it hurts. The first transformation is always the worst." "Transformation?" Lena gasped. "Into what? You said wolf, but that's not possible." "It's very possible, and it's happening right now." Kael's gray eyes held hers, steady and certain. "Lena, I need you to listen to me. What you're feeling, what's happening to your body. It's not an attack, it's not a disease, it's an awakening. You're a shifter. You always have been. The mark on your shoulder is proof." Shifter. The word tasted foreign on her tongue. "You mean like werewolves? Like in movies?" "Movies got most of it wrong." Kael reached for one of the water bottles and held it to her lips. Lena drank desperately, though her hands were shaking too badly to hold it herself. "We're not cursed. We don't need a full moon. And silver doesn't kill us. It binds us, controls us, or in your case, marks us." "Marks us for what?" Kael's jaw tightened. "That's a longer conversation. Right now, we need to focus on getting you through this alive." The burning in Lena's shoulders suddenly intensified, spreading down her spine like lightning. She arched backward with a scream, and Kael's hands were immediately on her, holding her down before she could hurt herself. "Breathe," he commanded. "Don't fight it. Fighting makes it worse. You have to let the wolf out, Lena. Let her rise." "I can't. I don't know how." "Yes, you do. Somewhere deep inside, you already know. Your bloodline knows." Kael's voice dropped lower, taking on a resonance that seemed to vibrate in Lena's bones. "Close your eyes. Find the place where the burning is strongest. That's where she lives. That's where she's been waiting your entire life." Lena wanted to argue that this was insane, that wolves and bloodlines and transformations weren't real, that she was just Lena Harrow, ordinary filing clerk from an ordinary family in an ordinary life. But her body knew better than her mind. Her body had been trying to tell her for months that something was changing, that the mark wasn't just a mark, that the dreams of running through forests on four legs weren't just dreams. She closed her eyes. The darkness behind her eyelids pulsed with the rhythm of her racing heart. Lena focused on the burning, not trying to escape it anymore, but moving toward it, into it. The pain was centered just below her left shoulder blade, a knot of molten heat that seemed to pulse with its own consciousness. And then she felt it. Her. The wolf. She was huge and ancient and absolutely terrifying. Lena could sense her presence like a second consciousness curled inside her chest, all raw power and instinct and hunger. Silver fur that glowed like moonlight, eyes that had seen centuries pass, claws that could tear through steel. The wolf looked at Lena with recognition, with longing, with a patience that had lasted 25 years. Finally, the wolf seemed to say, "Finally, you stop running." "I see her," Lena whispered, barely aware she was speaking out loud. "She's so strong." "Good." Kael's hand found hers, squeezing gently. "Now ask her to come forward. Ask her to show you what you really are." Lena reached out with something that wasn't quite a hand, touching the wolf's consciousness with something that wasn't quite a thought. The wolf moved toward her, not attacking, but merging, and Lena felt the moment their consciousnesses began to blend, like watching two rivers flow into one. The pain exploded into something beyond pain, something so overwhelming that Lena's mind simply white-screened for a moment, unable to process the information her body was sending. Her bones were breaking. That's what it felt like. Every bone in her body shattering and reforming in new configurations. Her spine elongated, her skull reshaped itself. Her fingers twisted and shortened, nails hardening into claws. Fur erupted from her skin in a silver wave that swept from her shoulders to her newly formed tail. Lena heard herself screaming, but the sound that came out was changing pitch, becoming something between human and animal, pain and triumph, ending and beginning. And then, between one heartbeat and the next, it was over. Lena lay panting on the blankets, but the body doing the panting wasn't human anymore. She tried to push herself up and found herself standing on 4 legs instead of 2. Her vision had changed, colors muted but details sharpened to impossible clarity. She could see dust motes floating in the air, could count individual strands in the blanket beneath her paws, could make out Kael's expression with perfect precision even in the dim light. She turned her head, such a strange sensation, her neck moving with unfamiliar musculature, and caught sight of herself in a shard of mirror propped against the wall. The wolf staring back at her was massive, easily the size of a small horse. Her fur was pure silver, so bright it seemed to generate its own light in the darkness. But it was her eyes that held Lena transfixed. They were still her eyes, still brown, but now they glowed with an inner luminescence that made them look like molten amber. I'm beautiful, Lena thought, and was startled by the realization. She'd never thought of herself as beautiful before. Ordinary, yes. Acceptable. Forgettable. But this creature in the mirror was magnificent. Breathe, Kael said quietly. He hadn't moved from his position beside her, though Lena was now eye level with him even on 4 legs. Just breathe and let yourself adjust. The first shift is overwhelming. Lena tried to speak, to tell him she was okay, but what came out was a soft whine that made her ears flatten in embarrassment. She had ears now, actual wolf ears that swiveled independently to track sounds. You can't talk in this form, Kael explained, not in words. But you can communicate. Try pushing a thought toward me. Imagine me hearing what you want to say. Lena focused on Kael, on his storm-gray eyes that watched her with an expression she couldn't quite read. She thought as clearly as she could. How do I change back? Kael's eyebrows rose slightly. Good. Very good. Most new shifters can't manage directed thoughts for days. He stood up slowly, keeping his movements non-threatening. Changing back is the same process in reverse. Find your human form inside yourself and ask the wolf to step back. She won't disappear. She's part of you now. But she'll retreat so you can wear your original skin again. What if I can't? You can. I promise you can. Kael's voice was gentle but firm. But take your time. There's no rush. Except there was. Lena could feel it. The wolf was exhilarating, powerful, free in a way Lena had never been. But she was still Lena. Still human. Still herself. She needed to prove she could come back, that she wasn't lost to this form forever. She closed her eyes again, strange without eyelids that closed horizontally, and searched for the human girl she'd been. Found her huddled in the space the wolf had occupied, small and vulnerable and scared. Lena reached for her gently, and this time when they merged, the pain was less. Still intense, still overwhelming, but bearable. Her bones reformed themselves with sickening cracks, fur receded into skin, claws softened back into fingernails. Her spine compressed, her skull reshaped, and then Lena was gasping on the blankets in her human body, naked and shaking and covered in sweat. Kael had already turned away, giving her privacy. He pulled a large blanket from the pile and held it out without looking. Here, shifting burns through clothes unless they're specially made. Lena wrapped the blanket around herself with trembling hands, suddenly aware of every ache in her body. She felt like she'd run a marathon and been hit by a truck simultaneously. How is that possible? Your bloodline. Kael turned back now that she was covered, lowering himself to sit cross-legged on the floor across from her. You're a born shifter, Lena. Not turned. Not cursed. You were born with the wolf inside you, passed down through generations. But my parents, my father, he never said anything about Because he probably didn't know. Kael's expression was serious. Shifter genetics are complicated. The gene can skip generations, hide dormant for decades, then resurface without warning. That mark on your shoulder? That's what we call the awakening sign. It appears a few months before the first transformation as the wolf begins to emerge. Lena pulled the blanket tighter, her mind reeling. If this is genetic, then there are more people like me? Like you? Thousands, all over the world. Kael paused. But none quite like you. What does that mean? Kael studied her for a long moment, as if weighing how much to reveal. Finally, he said, "Your fur, Lena. Did you see it?" It was silver. So? Silver wolves are extinct, or they were supposed to be. Kael's voice dropped. The last confirmed silver wolf died over 300 years ago. They were the original shifter bloodline, the first wolves to take human form, the most powerful of all our kind. But they were hunted to extinction by people who feared their power. The room felt suddenly colder. And you're telling me I'm one of them? That's impossible. I'm nobody. I'm ordinary. I work in a medical office filing insurance claims. You were hiding. Kael leaned forward, intensity radiating from him. Either your family hid what you were, or the bloodline hid itself in your DNA, waiting for the right moment to emerge. But you're not ordinary, Lena. You never were. You're the first silver wolf born in 3 centuries. So what does that mean? What am I supposed to do with this? This power? That depends. Kael's gray eyes locked on hers. Because there's more you need to know about what that mark means, about why I was at that restaurant tonight, about the bond between us. Lena's stomach dropped. What bond? Kael reached up and pulled down the collar of his shirt, revealing his own shoulder. There, in the exact same place where Lena's mark sat, was an identical crescent-shaped brand. But where hers was still fresh and red, his was old, a silvery scar that looked like it had been there for years. This is a mate mark, Kael said quietly. It appears on both partners when the wolf recognizes its destined mate. Mine appeared 5 years ago. I've been searching for you ever since. The words didn't make sense. Couldn't make sense. Mate, you mean like the person the wolf chooses to bond with for life. The one person who can truly understand what you are, who can run beside you, who completes the pack. Kael's expression was carefully neutral, but Lena could see tension in his shoulders. It's not a human concept, exactly. It's deeper than marriage, more permanent than love. It's recognition. Lena's mind flashed back to Marcus, to his words in the restaurant. You're ordinary, predictable, boring. Just hours ago, she'd thought Marcus was her future, her forever, the person she was meant to be with. And now this stranger, this impossibly intense man with storm eyes and secrets, was telling her they were destined for each other because of marks on their shoulders? No. Lena shook her head. No, this is too much. I just found out I'm a werewolf. I can't also process being mated to someone I met an hour ago. I know. Kael's voice was gentle. And I'm not asking you to. The mate bond isn't a prison, Lena. It's an option, a possibility. You can choose to acknowledge it or ignore it. The wolf might recognize me, but you get to decide what that means. What do you want it to mean? The question came out sharper than Lena intended, but she needed to know. Needed to understand why this man had spent 5 years searching for her, why he'd been at the restaurant tonight, why he'd risked himself to help her through the transformation. Kael was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I want you to be safe. I want you to understand what you are and what that means in a world that would exploit or destroy you if they knew. Beyond that, he shrugged. Beyond that, we have time to figure out. Before Lena could respond, a sound echoed through the abandoned building, distant but distinct. The creak of a door opening, footsteps on stairs. Kael was on his feet instantly, his entire body shifting into a predatory stance. Get dressed, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. Now. Lena looked around frantically. With what? My dress is... Kael was already moving, pulling a bag from behind a stack of crates Lena hadn't noticed before. He tossed her clothing, jeans, a shirt, boots. I prepared for this. Hurry. Lena didn't argue. She dropped the blanket and dressed as quickly as her shaking hands would allow, hyper-aware of the footsteps getting closer. Multiple sets of footsteps. At least 4, maybe 5 people moving through the building with deliberate stealth. "Who is it?" Lena whispered, pulling on the second boot. "Hunters." Kael's eyes had gone predatory, and for the first time Lena saw the wolf looking out through his human gaze. They must have been tracking me, or they sensed the transformation. Either way, they're here for you. "Hunters? You mean people who hunt? Shifters?" "Yes." Kael moved to the door, pressing his ear against it. "They want you alive, Lena. The silver wolf is too valuable to kill outright. They'll try to take you, bind you with silver chains, sell you to the highest bidder. There are collectors who would pay fortunes for a living legend." Terror locked Lena's muscles in place. "What do we do?" "We run. Or..." Kael turned to look at her, and something dangerous flickered in his expression. "Or you fight. You're stronger than they are. Faster. If you shift again..." "I can't." Lena's voice broke. I don't know how to fight. I don't know how to be what you're saying I am." "Then stay behind me and run when I tell you to." The door exploded inward before either of them could move. 5 figures burst into the room, dressed in black tactical gear that covered them from head to toe. They moved with military precision, spreading out to cut off escape routes, weapons already drawn and aimed. But these weren't guns. They were crossbows, and the bolts loaded in them gleamed silver in the dim light. "Kael Varen." The lead hunter's voice was distorted by his helmet. "Step away from the girl. She's coming with us." "Like hell she is." Kael's voice dropped an octave, resonating with a power that made the air itself vibrate. "You're trespassing on protected territory. Leave now, and I'll let you live." The hunter laughed, a cold, mechanical sound. "Protected? By whose authority?" "You're far from your kingdom, Wolf King. No guards, no pack. Just you and a newly turned pup who doesn't even know what she is yet." "Wolf King?" Lena stared at Kael's back, seeing him differently now. The way he held himself, absolute authority even when outnumbered. The way the hunters hesitated despite their weapons. The way he'd talked about bloodlines and power like someone who understood them intimately. "You knew who I was," one of the hunters said, and now he was looking directly at Lena. "Or rather, what you could become. That's why you were watching her, isn't it? The legendary silver wolf, reborn. Do you have any idea what you're worth, little girl?" "She's worth more than you could comprehend," Kael growled. "And if you take one step closer, you'll learn exactly what a king does to those who threaten his mate." The room erupted into motion. Kael shifted mid-leap, his human form exploding into a massive black wolf that was somehow even larger than Lena's silver form. He hit the nearest hunter like a freight train, jaws closing around the man's armored shoulder and shaking him like a rag doll. The other hunters fired their crossbows simultaneously. Kael twisted impossibly fast, but one bolt grazed his flank, drawing a line of blood across his dark fur. He snarled, the sound so deep and primal that it rattled the windows. "Get her!" the lead hunter shouted. "Forget the king. We just need the silver wolf." 2 hunters rushed toward Lena. She backed up against the wall, terror freezing her in place. They were going to take her, chain her, sell her like an animal. No. The wolf inside her surged forward, responding not to conscious thought, but to pure survival instinct. Lena felt the shift begin. Faster this time, less painful, as if her body was learning the pattern. Fur erupted across her skin. Her bones reformed with cracks that echoed like gunshots. And then she was lunging forward on 4 silver legs, no longer thinking, just moving. The first hunter didn't expect her speed. Lena's jaws closed around his leg, and she heard the crunch of armor giving way. He screamed and fell, and Lena was already moving toward the second hunter, claws tearing through his tactical vest like it was paper. Across the room, Kael had disabled 2 more hunters. One lay unconscious against the wall. The other was crawling toward the door, leaving a trail of blood. Only the leader remained standing, and he was backing toward the shattered window, a silver knife in his hand. "This isn't over," he said, his voice shaking now despite the bravado. "They'll keep coming. Every hunter in the region will want the reward for bringing you in. Every collector will pay fortunes. You can't hide her forever, Varen. Watch me." Kael's wolf form prowled forward, and the hunter had the good sense to jump through the window, using a rope Lena hadn't noticed to rappel down to the alley below. The remaining hunters followed, dragging their injured companions with them, leaving only bloodstains and shattered equipment behind. Silence fell over the room. Lena shifted back to human form, collapsing against the wall as the adrenaline drained out of her. Her hands were shaking violently, and when she looked down, she saw blood on them, hunter blood. She'd hurt them, torn through armor like it was nothing. "I could have killed them," she whispered. Kael, still in wolf form, padded over to her and shifted back. He was bleeding from the crossbow wound, but he ignored it, crouching down to meet her eyes. "But you didn't. You controlled it. On your first night, in your second shift, you controlled the wolf enough to fight without killing. Do you understand how extraordinary that is?" "I don't feel extraordinary. I feel terrified." "Good." Kael's hand found her shoulder, his thumb brushing over the mate mark that was still burning softly beneath her shirt. "Fear keeps you sharp, but so does strength, Lena, and you are stronger than you know." Lena looked at this man, this wolf king who'd saved her life, who'd shown her what she really was, who wore a mark matching hers like a brand of fate. There were 1,000 questions she needed to ask, 1,000 things she didn't understand. But right now, covered in blood in an abandoned building with hunters who wanted to sell her like livestock, only one question mattered. What happens now? Kael's storm-gray eyes held hers, and she saw determination there, mixed with something that might have been hope. "Now," he said, "I take you somewhere they can't follow. Somewhere you can learn what you are without being hunted. Somewhere protected by laws even human hunters fear to break." "Where?" "Home." Kael stood, offering her his hand. "My home. The Shifter Kingdom." Lena stared at Kael's outstretched hand, her mind still reeling from everything that had happened in the last 2 hours. Shifter Kingdom. The word sounded like something from a fantasy novel, not a place that could actually exist in the real world where she'd spent 25 years filing insurance claims and taking the same bus route to work every morning. "A kingdom," she repeated slowly. "You're telling me there's an actual kingdom of werewolves and nobody knows about it?" "Humans know what they're allowed to know." Kael's hand remained steady, patient. "We've existed alongside your kind for thousands of years, hidden in plain sight. The kingdom isn't a place on human maps, but it's very real, and right now it's the only place you'll be safe." Lena looked at his hand, strong, scarred, still flecked with blood from the fight, and then at his face. There was no deception there, no manipulation, just certainty and something that might have been concern. She took his hand. Kael pulled her to her feet gently, his grip warm and solid. "We need to move quickly. Those hunters will report back to whoever hired them, and next time they'll come with more men, more silver, more ways to trap you." "How do we get to this kingdom? I don't have my wallet, my ID, I don't even have my phone." "You don't need any of that." Kael was already moving toward the door, scanning the hallway beyond with predatory awareness. "The kingdom exists in a protected territory about 200 miles north of here. We'll drive most of the way, then cross the border on foot." "Protected by what?" "Ancient treaties, blood magic, and the fact that any human who crosses uninvited tends to lose their way and end up exactly where they started, convinced they've been walking in circles." Kael glanced back at her. "Our kind has had a long time to perfect our defenses." They moved through the abandoned building quickly, Kael leading with the confidence of someone who'd mapped every exit and shadow. Lena's new senses were overwhelming. She could smell the hunter's fear sweat still lingering in the air, could hear rats scratching in the walls 3 floors below, could feel the vibration of traffic on the street through the soles of her boots. Everything was sharper now, more intense, like she'd been living her entire life with a veil between her and reality, and the wolf had finally torn it away. The same black car from before waited in the alley, engine running. Kael opened the back door for Lena, then slid in beside her. The driver, a man Lena hadn't gotten a good look at earlier, pulled away from the curb without a word. Now, in the dome light, Lena could see him clearly. He was older, maybe 60, with silver threading through his dark hair and scars that crossed his neck like someone had tried to strangle him with wire. His eyes met Lena's in the rearview mirror, and they were gold, pure molten gold. "Marcus," Kael said, and Lena flinched at the name before realizing he was talking to the driver, not her ex-boyfriend. "This is Lena Harrow. Lena, Marcus is my head of security. He's been helping me search for you." "Your Majesty." Marcus's voice was gravel and smoke. The safe house has been compromised. 3 more hunter teams arrived within the last hour, all equipped with silver nets and tranquilizers. They're setting up a perimeter around the entire district. They moved faster than I expected. Kael's jaw tightened. Change of plans. We go straight to the northern route. No stops. The council won't like you bringing her in without preparation, sire. Protocol requires... The council can voice their objections after I've ensured her safety. Kael's tone left no room for argument. Drive, Marcus. The car accelerated through the city's streets, weaving between late-night traffic with practiced ease. Lena watched the familiar landmarks of her city slide past the windows. The library where she'd spent countless Saturday afternoons, the park where her father used to take her to feed ducks, the bus stop where she'd waited every morning for 3 years. Her entire life was in this city. Her apartment, her job, her father, who lived in the assisted care facility on the east side and would wake up tomorrow wondering why she hadn't called on her birthday. My father, Lena said suddenly. I need to tell him I'm okay. He'll worry. You can't contact him. Kael's voice was gentle but firm. Not yet. The hunters will be monitoring everyone you know, waiting for you to reach out. Any communication puts both of you at risk. So I just disappear? Let him think I'm dead or kidnapped, or I'll have someone deliver a message, anonymous, enough to let him know you're safe without revealing where you are. Kael turned to face her fully. I know this is difficult, Lena. I know you're being asked to leave behind everything familiar. But right now, staying in this city means dying or worse. The people hunting you don't want you for ransom. They want you for what you are. And they'll use anyone you care about to get to you. The truth of it settled over Lena like a weight. Her father was 82, frail from a lifetime of hard work and harder losses. If hunters came after him, used him as leverage, she couldn't let that happen. Okay, Lena whispered. Okay, but as soon as it's safe, I need to see him. I need to explain. You will, I promise. Kael's hand found hers in the space between them, his thumb brushing across her knuckles. The mate mark on her shoulder pulsed with warmth at his touch. For now, just focus on staying alive and learning what you've become. Everything else we'll handle together. The drive north took 3 hours. Lena dozed fitfully, her body exhausted from the transformations and the fight, her mind too wired to truly rest. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the hunter's weapons, felt the wolf rising inside her, heard Marcus's words in the restaurant. You're ordinary, predictable, boring. If he could see her now. The thought brought a bitter smile to her lips. Marcus had thrown her away because she wasn't ambitious enough, wasn't exciting enough, wasn't enough. And now she was something he couldn't even comprehend. Something legendary, powerful, valuable enough that trained killers were hunting her through the streets. Would he regret his choice if he knew? Would he try to come back, try to claim some part of her story? It didn't matter. Marcus Bradford was part of a life that no longer existed. The girl who'd loved him, who'd waited patiently for a proposal that would never come, who'd filed insurance claims and read romance novels and kept her head down. That girl had died in the Palomar restaurant. What rose from those ashes was something else entirely. The car finally slowed as they left the highway, turning onto progressively smaller roads until they were bouncing along a dirt track that barely qualified as a path. Trees pressed in on both sides, their branches forming a tunnel overhead that blocked out the stars. We walk from here, Kael said as Marcus brought the car to a stop in a small clearing. The border is about 2 miles north. Once we cross it, you'll feel the difference. Lena climbed out of the car, stretching muscles that had stiffened during the drive. The forest smelled alive in a way the city never did. Rich earth and pine sap and something wild that made the wolf inside her lift its head with interest. Marcus handed Kael a pack from the trunk, then clasped his king's forearm in a gesture that looked ancient and formal. I'll return to the city and begin monitoring hunter movements. If they track you this far, I'll send warning. Good. And Marcus? Kael's voice dropped. Make sure Lena's father is protected. Discreetly. Marcus's gold eyes shifted to Lena, and she saw respect there that hadn't been present before. It will be done, Your Majesty. He drove away, leaving Kael and Lena alone in the forest darkness. Without the car's headlights, the night pressed in close, broken only by silver moonlight filtering through the canopy. Can you feel it? Kael asked quietly. The pole north? Lena closed her eyes and focused. At first there was nothing. Then gradually, she became aware of a sensation like a current in water, invisible, but definitely there. Something was pulling her forward, drawing her deeper into the trees with the persistence of a tide. Yes, she breathed. What is that? The kingdom calling you home. Kael started walking, and Lena fell into step beside him. Every shifter feels it the first time they approach the border. Your wolf recognizes the territory, the pack, the place where our kind has lived for millennia. They walked in silence for a while, following the pull deeper into the forest. Lena's new senses painted the night in incredible detail. She could see a fox watching them from beneath a fallen log, could hear an owl's wings cutting through the air 50 feet above, could smell rain coming from the west. You called yourself a king, Lena said eventually. Earlier you said Wolf King. What does that mean exactly? Kael was quiet for so long that Lena thought he might not answer. Then, it means I rule over all shifters in this territory. 10,000 wolves who look to me for leadership, protection, and justice. It means I've held this position for 15 years since my father was killed defending the border from human militias who discovered our existence. It means I carry the weight of an entire people on my shoulders and make decisions that determine whether they live or die. The rawness in his voice surprised Lena. This wasn't the confident, commanding man who'd rescued her from the restaurant. This was someone carrying a burden so heavy it had reshaped him. That's why you were alone tonight, Lena said slowly, pieces clicking together. Why you didn't have guards or a pack with you. You were hiding that you'd found me. The council would have demanded I bring you in immediately, under armed escort, to be examined and questioned and judged. Kael's hands clenched into fists. I wanted to give you time. To let you transform in private, to explain what you were before 50 strangers descended on you demanding answers. I wanted... He stopped walking abruptly, turning to face her. In the moonlight, his gray eyes looked almost silver. I wanted to meet you first, he said quietly. Not as a king meeting a valuable asset, not as a ruler deciding how to use a weapon, but as Kael meeting Lena. Two people connected by fate before politics and power complicated everything. Lena's heart was pounding. And now? Now that I know what you are, what I am, what happens? Now we cross that border together and everything changes. Kael gestured ahead where Lena could see a break in the trees. Once you enter the kingdom as my acknowledged mate, you become royalty. You'll have protection, resources, training, but you'll also have enemies. There are wolves who've spent years positioning themselves to influence the throne, who won't appreciate an unknown silver wolf appearing out of nowhere and claiming a place at the king's side. I'm not claiming anything, Lena protested. I didn't ask for this mate bond. I didn't ask to be a silver wolf or royalty or... I know. Kael stepped closer, and Lena could feel the heat radiating from his body. But the bond exists whether we asked for it or not. And the moment the council sees that mark on your shoulder matching mine, they'll know what you are to me. The question is, what do you want to be? It was the same question he'd asked before in the abandoned building, but this time, standing on the threshold of a new world with the ruins of her old life behind her, Lena understood what he was really asking. Did she want to walk through this alone? Or did she want an ally, a partner, someone who understood the wolf inside her because he carried one too? I want to survive, Lena said honestly. I want to understand what I am. I want to be strong enough that nobody can ever make me feel ordinary again. She met Kael's eyes. If being your mate helps me do that, then I'll accept it. But I won't be a puppet, or a prize, or a political tool. If we do this, I need to know I have a choice. A slow smile spread across Kael's face, the first real smile she'd seen from him. It transformed his severe features into something almost warm. You'll always have a choice, Lena Harrow. That's a promise. He offered his hand again, and this time when Lena took it, she felt the mate mark on her shoulder flare with heat that wasn't painful. It felt like recognition. Like coming home to a place she'd never been. Together they crossed the border. The change was immediate and overwhelming. One moment, Lena was walking through a normal forest. The next, the air itself seemed to crystallize, becoming somehow thicker, richer, alive with energy that made her skin tingle. The pull she'd been feeling intensified into a certainty that resonated in her bones, and she could sense them. Thousands of presences scattered across the territory, each one a small flame of consciousness that her wolf recognized as pack, as family, as her people. "Welcome to Blackstone," Kyle said quietly, "the heart of the Shifter Kingdom." Through the trees ahead, lights appeared. Not electric lights, but something older. Torches and lanterns that cast dancing shadows across stone buildings that looked like they'd been carved from the mountain itself. The architecture was a strange blend of ancient and modern, medieval towers with solar panels on their roofs, cobblestone streets lit by bioluminescent moss. And everywhere, there were wolves. They moved through the streets in both human and wolf form, some carrying baskets of goods, others engaged in conversations that stopped abruptly as they caught Lena's scent. Gold eyes, green eyes, amber eyes, all turned toward her with expressions ranging from curiosity to shock to something that might have been fear. "The silver wolf," someone whispered, and the words spread like wildfire through the crowd. "She's real. After 300 years, the king brought her home." Kale's hand tightened on Lena's as they walked through streets that were rapidly filling with onlookers. He kept his expression neutral, regal, but Lena could feel the tension in his grip. "Don't shift," he murmured. "Not here, not yet. Let them see you as human first." "Why?" "Because right now you're a legend. If you shift and prove what you are, you become a target." The crowd parted as they approached a massive structure at the center of the city, a palace that looked like it had been grown from the mountain rather than built upon it. Obsidian walls reflected torchlight and volcanic ripples. Towers spiraled upward into the night sky. And standing on the steps leading to the main entrance was a group of people whose presence radiated authority. The council, Lena realized. The people Kyle had wanted to avoid. There were 7 of them, arranged in a semicircle like judges. 6 men and 1 woman, all wearing robes that marked them as officials. And all of them were staring at Lena with expressions that ranged from fascination to hostility. "Kyle Varin," the woman spoke, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent courtyard. She was elderly, maybe 70, with white hair braided down her back and eyes like chips of ice. "You were expected to return 3 days ago, alone." "Plans changed, Counselor Thorne." Kale's voice took on the formal tone of kingship. "I found what I was searching for." "So we see." Thorne's gaze raked over Lena like a physical touch, assessing, calculating. "And you brought her straight here, without notification, without protocol, without even confirming what she is. How very impulsive of you." "I brought her here because she was being hunted by human mercenaries armed with silver weapons," Kyle said coldly. "Would you have preferred I leave her to be captured and sold? We would have preferred you remember your duty to this kingdom over your personal desires." This came from a younger counselor, maybe 40, with sharp features and ambition written in every line of his face. Bringing an unverified shifter across the border is a security risk. Bringing one who claims to be Silver Wolf is— "She doesn't claim anything," Kael interrupted. "She is what she is, and she has as much right to sanctuary here as any born shifter." "Does she?" Thorne stepped forward, descending the stairs with slow deliberation. "We have only your word that she's what you believe. Only your word that she's safe. Also, only your word that she's your mate." She stopped directly in front of Lena, so close that Lena could see the calculation in her ice-chip eyes. "Show us the mark, girl," Lena's wolf snarled inside her chest, responding to the challenge in Thorne's voice. She wanted to refuse, to tell this woman that she didn't take orders from strangers, but Kael's hand squeezed hers once. A warning or encouragement, she couldn't tell which. She pulled down the collar of her shirt, exposing the crescent mark on her shoulder. The crowd gasped. Several wolves shifted involuntarily, their control slipping in the face of what they were seeing. Even the counselors looked shaken, though Thorne hid it quickly behind a mask of skepticism. "A mark proves nothing," Thorne said, but her voice had lost some of its certainty. "Scars can be faked, brands can be applied. If she truly is a silver wolf, let her prove it. Let her shift here, now, before witnesses." "No." Kael stepped between Thorne and Lena, his body language screaming protection. "She transformed for the first time tonight. She's exhausted, injured from fighting hunters. and she doesn't owe you a performance. She owes this kingdom the truth. Thorn's voice hardened. If she's truly Silver Wolf, she's too valuable to risk on your word alone. If she's not, she's a security threat who's seen too much. Either way, we need proof. The other counselors were nodding now, closing ranks. Lena could feel the trap tightening around them. If she refused to shift, they'd doubt her. If she shifted and lost control, they'd call her dangerous. There was no winning move, except one.
I'll do it, Lena said quietly, stepping out from behind Kael. I'll shift, but not because you're ordering me to. She met Thorn's eyes directly, letting her wolf rise close enough to the surface that she knew they'd see the glow beginning in her irises. I'll do it so everyone here knows exactly what I am, so nobody can question it later, so nobody can use doubt as a weapon against me. She could feel Kael's surprise, his concern, but she could also feel something else. Pride, maybe.
Respect. Lena pulled off her borrowed shirt, not caring about modesty anymore. Her jeans followed. She stood in her underwear in front of hundreds of strangers, and for the first time in her life, she didn't feel small or ordinary or forgettable. She felt powerful. The shift came easier this time, her body remembering the pattern. Bones reformed with cracks that echoed off the palace walls. Fur erupted in a silver wave that seemed to generate its own light. And when Lena stood on 4 legs instead of 2, when she lifted her massive head and met Thorn's shocked gaze with eyes that glowed like molten amber, the entire courtyard dropped to their knees. All of them. Counselors, guards, merchants, children. Even Thorn, her ice-chip eyes wide with something that looked like awe or terror, or both. Only Kael remained standing. He walked toward Lena slowly, his hand outstretched. When his fingers touched her silver fur, the mate mark flared so brightly that it was visible even through her pelt, a crescent moon that blazed with inner light. "The Silver Wolf has returned," Kael said, his voice carrying across the silent courtyard. "After 300 years, the original bloodline lives again. And she stands under my protection, recognized as my mate, acknowledged as future queen of this kingdom. Does anyone here dispute my claim?" The silence was absolute. Lena could hear heartbeats, could smell fear and wonder mixing in the air, could feel the weight of thousands of eyes on her transformed body. Then someone in the crowd began to howl, a long, ululating cry that was picked up by throat after throat until the entire city was singing. It wasn't a song of words, but of recognition, of welcome, of something ancient finally coming home. Lena shifted back to human form, accepting the cloak that Kael wrapped around her shoulders. She was shaking, adrenaline and exhaustion making her knees weak, but she refused to collapse. Not here. Not in front of people who were still deciding whether she was a miracle or a threat. Thorn rose slowly from her kneeling position, her expression unreadable. "The council acknowledges what we've witnessed," she said carefully. "The Silver Wolf lives. The mate bond is confirmed. But Your Majesty," her eyes shifted to Kael, bringing a newly turned shifter directly into the palace, granting her royal status without training or testing, making promises about her future role. "These decisions will have consequences." "Let them come," Kael said flatly. "Lena stays, she trains, she learns, and when she's ready, she takes her place at my side. That's not a request, counselor. It's a decree." Thorn's jaw tightened, but she nodded. "As you command, Your Majesty. Though I hope you're prepared for what you've set in motion." Before Kael could respond, a commotion erupted at the edge of the courtyard. The crowd parted, wolves scrambling out of the way as a figure pushed through. No, not pushed, fought. Guards were trying to restrain someone, a young man maybe Kael's age who moved with deadly grace even with 3 wolves hanging off his arms. His eyes were fixed on Lena with an intensity that made her wolf snarl in warning. "That's her?" the man shouted, breaking free of one guard and sending him flying with a backhand that looked casual but was clearly devastating. "That's the Silver Wolf he's been wasting years searching for? That scared little human who doesn't even know how to hold her wolf form for more than 5 minutes? He was close now, close enough that Lena could see the resemblance. The same sharp features as Kael, the same storm gray eyes, the same predatory grace. But where Kael's presence was controlled power, this man radiated barely contained violence. "Enough, Darius." Kael's voice dropped to a growl that made several nearby wolves whimper and back away. Stand down! Why? Darius finally stopped fighting the guards, but his eyes never left Lena. So you can parade your precious mate around like she's already queen? She's nothing, KL. A newly turned pup who got lucky with her bloodline. She'll get herself killed within a week, and she'll probably take half the kingdom with her. My brother, Kael said quietly to Lena, though his gaze remained locked on Darius. The crown prince. He's been resistant to the idea of my mate. Brother. Of course. Lena could see it now, the way Darius moved like a darker mirror of Kael, the way the crowd gave him the same wide berth they gave the king, the way even the council looked nervous at his presence. Resistant seems like an understatement, Lena muttered. You should leave while you can, Darius called out, his voice carrying across the courtyard. This kingdom doesn't need a silver wolf queen. It needs strength, experience, someone who's earned their place through blood and battle, not some human playing dress-up in wolfskin. The words struck deeper than they should have, echoing Marcus's voice in the restaurant. Ordinary, predictable, not good enough. Lena felt the wolf surge inside her, responding to the challenge, to the dismissal, to the assumption that she was weak because she was new. I didn't ask to be Silver Wolf, she said, her voice surprisingly steady. I didn't ask for this mate bond, or this palace, or any of this. But I'm here now, and I'm not leaving just because you think I'm not worthy. Darius laughed, cold and cutting. Then prove it, fight me, right here, right now. Show everyone what the legendary Silver Wolf can really do when she faces an opponent who knows what he's doing. Darius, Kael started forward, but Lena caught his arm. No, she said quietly. He's right. They all need to see what I can do, what I'm willing to do. You just transformed for the first time hours ago, Kael said urgently. Darius has been fighting since he was 6 years old. He'll destroy you. Maybe. Lena met his eyes, saw the concern there, the fear for her safety. It touched something in her chest, made the mate bond pulse with warmth. But if I back down now, they'll always see me as the scared little human hiding behind the king. I have to do this, Kael. I have to show them I'm more than my bloodline. For a long moment, Kael just looked at her. Then, slowly, he nodded. If you're going to do this, do it smart. Darius is faster and stronger, but he's arrogant. He'll underestimate you. Use that. He stepped back and Lena turned to face Darius across the courtyard. The crowd had formed a circle now, eager and terrified in equal measure. This was entertainment and politics and power all rolled into one brutal display. First blood? Darius called out, his grin predatory. Or should we make it interesting? Submission, Lena heard herself say. First one to submit loses. The crowd murmured. Submission fights could last for hours, could end in serious injury, could break bones and tear flesh before someone finally gave up. Bold, Darius said, and she could hear genuine interest in his voice now. Stupid, but bold. Let's see what you've got, little Silver Wolf. They shifted simultaneously. Darius's wolf form was massive, nearly as large as Kael's, with dark gray fur and eyes that glowed gold. He moved like liquid violence, circling Lena with the confidence of someone who'd never lost a fight. Lena's Silver Wolf crouched low, trying to remember everything her instincts were screaming at her. Watch his shoulders for the direction of his attack. Keep her center of gravity low. Don't let him get behind her. Darius lunged without warning, jaws snapping for her throat. Lena twisted away but wasn't fast enough. His teeth caught her shoulder, tearing through fur and flesh. She yelped and rolled, breaking free before he could lock his grip. Blood stained her silver fur red. The crowd roared. Darius circled again, and now his eyes held satisfaction. Not so legendary after all, are you? Just another wolf who's going to bleed. But Lena wasn't listening to his taunts anymore. She was listening to the wolf inside her, to the instincts rising through the pain. Darius was faster, yes. Stronger, yes. More experienced, absolutely. But he was also predictable. He favored his right side. Every attack came from the same angle, and he left his hindquarters exposed when he lunged, confident that his prey would be too busy defending their throat to notice the weakness. Lena waited for the next attack, forcing herself to stay still even as Darius charged. At the last second, she dropped flat, letting his momentum carry him over her. As he sailed past, she twisted and sank her teeth into his exposed hind leg, just above the joint. Darius howled in pain and shock, spinning to dislodge her, but Lena held on, using his own movement to tear deeper into muscle and tendon. She tasted blood and felt something in his leg give way. When she finally let go and scrambled back, Darius was limping. The crowd had gone silent. "Lucky shot," Darius snarled, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. He'd been expecting an easy victory, a chance to humiliate the Silver Wolf in front of the entire kingdom. Instead, he was injured, bleeding, and facing an opponent who'd just proven she could hurt him. They circled each other warily now, two predators reassessing. Lena's shoulder throbbed where Darius had torn it, but adrenaline kept the pain at bay. She could feel her wolf fully present now, not just responding to danger, but calculating, strategizing, fighting with the wisdom of a bloodline that had survived for millennia. Darius feinted left, then came in from the right. Lena saw it coming and met him head-on, their bodies colliding with the force of a car crash. They rolled across the courtyard, snapping and clawing, neither able to get a decisive grip. Blood splattered the cobblestones, Lena's silver, Darius's dark gray, mixing into puddles that shimmered in the torchlight. Lena felt ribs crack under Darius's weight, felt his claws rake across her side, opening wounds that would have made her scream if she'd been human. But the wolf didn't scream. The wolf fought harder, drove forward, refused to submit. They broke apart again, both panting, both bleeding, both still standing. "Enough!" Kael's voice cut through the courtyard like a blade. He strode into the circle, his presence so commanding that even Darius froze. This was supposed to be a demonstration, not a death match. "You've both proven your points. Stand down." "She hasn't submitted," Darius growled. "The fight isn't over until one of us—" "I said enough." Kael's eyes flashed with alpha power, the kind of command that couldn't be disobeyed. Both Lena and Darius felt the compulsion settle over them like chains, forcing them to step back, to lower their hackles, to stop fighting. Lena shifted back to human form, accepting another cloak from a guard. Her side was bleeding badly, her shoulder torn, her ribs screaming with every breath. But she was standing, and more importantly, she hadn't submitted. Darius shifted too, his legs still injured but already beginning to heal. He stared at Lena with an expression she couldn't read. Surprise, respect, resentment, all mixed together. "You're tougher than you look," he said finally. "Still stupid. Still gonna get yourself killed. But tougher." He limped away without waiting for a response, the crowd parting silently to let him through. Lena's knees finally gave out. Kael caught her before she hit the ground, lifting her effortlessly. "Medical wing," he snapped at someone. "Now!" As he carried her toward the palace, Lena looked back at the crowd. They were staring at her with new expressions, not just curiosity or fear, but something that might have been respect. She'd fought the crown prince and survived. She'd drawn his blood and refused to submit. For the first time since arriving in this impossible kingdom, Lena thought maybe, just maybe, she could survive here. Then she saw the woman standing at the edge of the crowd. She was beautiful in a way that made Lena's chest tighten, tall, elegant, with auburn hair that fell in perfect waves and green eyes that glittered with intelligence. She wore robes that marked her as counsel, but younger than the others, maybe 30. And she was looking at Kael with an expression Lena recognized instantly, because she'd worn it herself once, looking at Marcus across a candlelit table. Love. Possession. The certainty that he was hers. "Who is that?" Lena whispered. Kael followed her gaze, and his expression shuddered. "Counselor Vivian Ashmore. She's been pushing for a political alliance through marriage for the past 2 years." "Marriage to you?" "Yes." "Does she know about the mate bond?" "She knows." Kael's arms tightened around Lena. "She just doesn't accept it." Vivian smiled as they passed, sweet and venomous simultaneously. Then she turned and walked back into the palace, her robes swishing like a serpent's scales. Lena closed her eyes, exhaustion and pain finally overwhelming her. She'd survived the transformation, the hunters, the council, and Darius. But as darkness pulled her under, she couldn't shake the feeling that Vivian Ashmore was going to be the most dangerous enemy of all. Lena woke to the smell of herbs and the sound of rain against windows. For a disoriented moment, she thought she was back in her apartment, that everything had been a fever dream brought on by the humiliation at the Palomar. Then pain flared through her ribs, and memory crashed back with brutal clarity. The transformation, the hunters, the palace. Darius's teeth tearing into her shoulder. She opened her eyes to find herself in a room that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of amber. The walls glowed with warm light that seemed to come from within the stone itself. Heavy curtains framed floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked a courtyard where wolves in both forms moved through the rain. And sitting in a chair beside her bed, looking like he hadn't slept in days, was Kyle. "You're awake." His voice was rough with exhaustion and something that might have been relief. "The healer said you'd sleep for at least another day. I should have known you'd be stubborn about that too." Lena tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Her ribs screamed in protest, and her shoulder felt like someone had poured molten silver into the wounds. "How long?" 36 hours. Kael stood and poured water from a pitcher into a glass, holding it to her lips. "You lost a lot of blood. The healers had to use accelerated techniques to keep you from bleeding out. Even with shifter healing, you're going to be sore for a few more days." Lena drank gratefully, the cool water soothing her raw throat. "Darius?" "Already healed. He's been walking with a slight limp just to maintain his pride, but the damage you did to his leg was superficial." Kael set the glass down, his jaw tight. "He also hasn't stopped talking about how you fought. Half the palace thinks you're insane for taking him on. The other half thinks you're the bravest wolf they've seen in a generation. What do you think?" Kael's storm-gray eyes met hers. "I think you nearly died proving a point. I think you took a risk that could have ended with you bleeding out in that courtyard. I think—" He stopped, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "I think I've never been so terrified in my life as when I saw Darius's teeth in your throat." The raw honesty in his voice made Lena's chest tighten. "I had to do it. You know I did. If I'd backed down, they would have seen me as weak, as something to protect instead of respect." "I know." Kael sat back down heavily. "That doesn't mean I have to like it." They sat in silence for a moment, rain drumming against the windows. Lena studied Kyle's face, seeing exhaustion written in every line. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. His jaw was rough with stubble. His shoulders carried tension like a physical weight. "You haven't left this room, have you?" she asked quietly. "I'm the king. I can work from anywhere." "That's not what I asked." Kael's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "No, I haven't left. The healers needed to monitor you constantly, and I—" He paused. "The mate bond makes it difficult to be far from you when you're injured. It feels like part of me is broken too." Lena's hand moved unconsciously to her shoulder, where the crescent mark pulsed with warmth beneath the bandages. "I can feel it too, like there's a thread connecting us, pulling tight." "It will get stronger." Kael's voice was carefully neutral. "The more time we spend together, the more the bond solidifies. Eventually, being apart will be physically painful for both of us. That's why I need you to understand. You can still walk away from this. From me. If you leave now, before the bond fully sets, you'll be free. You can live your own life, make your own choices, without being tied to a king and a kingdom that will constantly put you in danger." Lena stared at him. "You're giving me an out? After everything that's happened, you're telling me I can just leave?" "I'm telling you that you deserve a choice." Kael's eyes were intense, burning with something that looked like hope and fear mixed together. "You didn't ask for any of this. The wolf, the bond, the politics. You should get to decide what kind of life you want. And what do you want?" The question hung in the air between them. Kael was silent for so long that Lena thought he might not answer. Then, quietly, "I want you to stay. I want you to learn what you're capable of and claim your place here. I want to watch you become the queen this kingdom needs, because I've seen your strength, Lena. In 2 days, you've survived things that would have broken most wolves. You're brave and stubborn and willing to fight for what you believe in, even when the odds are impossible." He leaned forward. "But more than that, I want you to choose to be here. Not because fate decided it, but because you decided it." Lena's heart was pounding. This man, this king, who could have demanded her obedience, who could have used the mate bond to control her, who held the power of an entire kingdom, was offering her freedom. Was telling her she could walk away. Marcus had thrown her away because she wasn't good enough. Kael was giving her the choice to leave because he wanted her to be free. The difference was everything. "I'm not leaving," Lena said firmly. Not because of the bond or because I'm afraid of the hunters or because I don't have anywhere else to go. I'm staying because this is the first place I've ever felt like I belonged. The first time anyone has looked at me and seen strength instead of mediocrity. She met Kael's eyes. I'm staying because I want to become whatever the silver wolf is meant to be. And if that means learning to be a queen, then that's what I'll do. The relief that flooded Kael's face was almost painful to witness. Then we start training tomorrow. If you're going to survive here, you need to learn how to fight properly, how to use your wolf senses, how to navigate palace politics without getting yourself killed. Tomorrow I can barely sit up without screaming. Which is why we'll start slow. Kael stood, and Lena caught his hand before he could move away. Thank you, she said quietly, for giving me a choice, for not treating me like property or a political tool, for seeing me. Kael's fingers tightened around hers. Always, Lena. I will always see you. He left her to rest, but sleep wouldn't come. Lena's mind was too active, replaying everything that had happened, trying to make sense of this new reality. She was a shifter, a silver wolf, a queen in training. Every label felt surreal, like she was playing a role in someone else's story. But the pain in her ribs was real. The exhaustion weighing down her limbs was real. And the determination burning in her chest, the need to prove she belonged here, that she was more than ordinary, that was the most real thing of all. The door opened and Lena tensed, expecting another healer or perhaps Kael returning. Instead, Vivian Ashmore glided into the room like she owned it. She was even more striking up close. Perfect bone structure, eyes like emeralds, skin that looked like it had never seen a blemish. She wore robes of deep green that matched her eyes, and she moved with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no in her life. The legendary silver wolf, Vivian said, her voice honey-sweet and poisonous. Recovering from her brave, or was it foolish, fight with the crown prince. How are you feeling? Like I was mauled by a wolf. Lena kept her voice neutral despite the warning bells ringing in her head. What do you want, counselor? To have a conversation, woman to woman. Vivian settled into the chair Kael had vacated, crossing her legs elegantly. About the king, about your place here, about the future you think you're going to have. I'm not interested in games. Neither am I. Vivian's smile sharpened. So let me be direct. Kael is wasting his time with you. The mate bond might be real, but it's not enough to build a kingdom on. You have no training, no political experience, no understanding of how this world works. You're a liability he can't afford. That's his decision to make, not yours. Is it? Vivian leaned forward. Because from where I'm sitting, you're making decisions that affect everyone in this kingdom. You walked into the palace and claimed a position you haven't earned. You challenged the crown prince and nearly got yourself killed, creating a diplomatic nightmare. You're attracting attention from hunters that puts all of us at risk. You're chaos wrapped in silver fur, and chaos gets people killed. The words hit closer to home than Lena wanted to admit. She had been making waves, causing problems, dragging danger into a kingdom that had managed to stay hidden for centuries. I didn't ask to be Silver Wolf, Lena said quietly. But you are, and that means you have responsibility. Vivian's eyes glittered. Responsibility to think about what's best for the kingdom, not just what you want. Kael needs a partner who can help him lead, who understands the political landscape, who has spent years preparing for this role, not someone who learned about shifters 2 days ago. Someone like you. Yes, Vivian didn't bother denying it. I've been training since childhood to stand beside a king. I know every alliance, every treaty, every faction in this kingdom. I can give Kael what he needs: stability, experience, strategic value. What can you give him? A mate bond that will fade once he realizes you're not worth the trouble? Lena felt ice spreading through her chest. Mate bonds don't fade. No, but kings can choose duty over desire. Vivian stood, smoothing her robes. Kael might want you now, but when you become a burden instead of an asset, when your presence threatens the kingdom he's sworn to protect, he'll make the hard choice. He'll set you aside, gently, kindly, because that's who he is, and he'll choose someone who can actually help him lead. She moved toward the door, then paused. I'm not trying to be cruel, Lena. I'm trying to save you from a future where you're constantly struggling to keep up, constantly failing, constantly disappointing a man who deserves better. You could leave now with dignity. Find a quiet life somewhere safe. Let Kael focus on ruling without distraction. And if I don't? Vivian's smile was almost pitying. Then you'll learn the hard way that being legendary doesn't make you qualified. And by the time you figure that out, you'll have damaged more than just yourself. She left, closing the door softly behind her. Lena lay back against the pillows, Vivian's words echoing in her mind. She wanted to dismiss them as manipulation, as jealousy from a woman who'd lost her chance at the throne. But there was truth there, too. She was chaos. She was untrained. She was attracting danger. What if Vivian was right? What if the best thing Lena could do for Kael and the kingdom was to leave? The door opened again, more gently this time, and a young woman slipped inside. She was maybe 20, with wild black curls and golden eyes that sparkled with mischief. Unlike Vivian's elegant robes, she wore practical leather pants and a tunic stained with what looked like engine grease. "Please tell me Vivian didn't just do her whole 'you're not good enough' speech," the woman said, dropping into a chair. "Because that woman has all the subtlety of a sledgehammer." Lena blinked. "Who are you?" "Sarah, royal mechanic, occasional troublemaker, and Kael's cousin." Sarah grinned. "I fix things. Cars mostly, but also bruised egos and political messes when needed, and right now you look like you could use some fixing. I'm fine. You're brooding. I can literally see the self-doubt spiraling behind your eyes." Sarah leaned forward. "Let me guess. Vivian told you that you're unqualified, that Kael deserves better, that you should leave for the good of the kingdom. Did I miss anything? How did you—" "Because she's been saying the same thing to anyone who'll listen since you arrived. She's terrified of you, Lena. Absolutely terrified. Of me? I can barely stand up without my ribs screaming. Of what you represent." Sarah's expression turned serious. "Vivian has spent years positioning herself as the perfect choice for queen. She's brilliant, connected, politically savvy. She thought it was just a matter of time before Kael gave up on finding his mate and married her for strategic reasons. Then you showed up, the mate bond confirmed, the silver wolf returned, and destroyed every plan she'd made. So she's trying to convince me to leave." "She's trying to make you doubt yourself until you do her job for her." Sarah's eyes flashed gold. "Don't let her. You know what you did yesterday? Fighting Darius in front of the entire kingdom when you'd barely shifted for the second time? That was insane, reckless, completely stupid." She grinned. "It was also exactly what this kingdom needed to see. We've been safe and stable and boring for decades. You're a reminder that we're wolves, not politicians. That sometimes you have to take risks and fight impossible battles and refuse to submit even when everyone says you should." "Vivian says that makes me chaos." "Vivian's right. You are chaos. You're also courage. And this kingdom has had plenty of stability. What we need now is someone brave enough to shake things up." Sarah stood. "Look, I'm not saying it's going to be easy. You've got a lot to learn, and plenty of people who want you to fail. But you've also got people who want you to succeed, who see what you could become." "Like who?" "Like Kael, obviously. Like me. Like half the younger wolves who are sick of the council's conservative bullshit." Sarah headed for the door. "Training starts tomorrow, by the way. Kael asked me to design your combat program. Hope you're ready to hurt, because I don't believe in going easy on legendary wolves." She winked and left, leaving Lena alone with thoughts that were far more complicated than before. She spent the rest of the day recovering, visited periodically by healers who changed her bandages, and muttered about young wolves who didn't know their limits. By evening, she could sit up without wanting to scream, and by nightfall, she was pacing the room despite protests from her ribs. Kael found her standing at the window, watching the moon rise over the kingdom. "You should be resting," he said from the doorway. "I've been resting for 36 hours. I'm going insane." Lena turned to face him. "Vivian came to see me." Kael's expression darkened. "What did she say?" "That I'm not qualified to be queen. That I'm chaos and danger wrapped in silver fur. That the best thing I could do for you and the kingdom is leave." "And what did you say?" "Nothing. She left before I could figure out if she was wrong." Lena met his eyes. "Is she? Wrong, I mean. Am I going to be a burden to you?" Kael crossed the room in 3 strides, his hands framing her face. Listen to me. Vivian is brilliant and experienced and everything she claims to be. She's also been told her entire life that she was destined for greatness, and she can't accept that destiny had other plans. She sees you as a threat because you represent everything she's not: genuine, brave, willing to fight for what you believe in instead of calculating every move for maximum political advantage. But she's right that I don't know what I'm doing. None of us did at the beginning. I was 23 when my father died, and I became king overnight. I made mistakes, terrible mistakes that cost lives and nearly tore this kingdom apart. But I learned, I grew, I became the leader they needed. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. You will too. Not because you're Silver Wolf or because of the mate bond, but because you have something Vivian will never understand. You have heart, Lena, and heart is what makes a true queen. Lena wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that she could become what he was describing, but doubt was a poison that had been growing in her chest since Vivian's visit. What if I fail? What if I put this kingdom in danger because I don't know what I'm doing? Then we'll face it together. Kale's voice was absolute certainty. You're not alone in this, Lena. You have me. You have Sarah. You have every wolf in this kingdom who saw you fight Darius and refused to submit. We'll teach you what you need to know. We'll stand with you when things get hard. But you have to choose to trust us. Trust yourself. Before Lena could respond, a commotion erupted in the hallway. Running footsteps, shouting voices. Then Marcus burst through the door, his gold eyes wild with urgency. Your Majesty, we have a situation. Kale turned, instantly shifting into command mode. Report. Hunters. They've crossed the border, somehow bypassed our defenses. They're in the lower city, and they're not trying to hide. Marcus's jaw was tight. They're demanding we turn over the Silver Wolf, or they'll start burning buildings. The room went silent. How many? Kale asked quietly. 50 that we can see. Probably more in reserve. They've taken hostages, a family that runs a bakery near the eastern gate. Parents and 3 children. They're threatening to execute them if we don't comply within the hour. Lena felt ice spreading through her veins. This was her fault. These hunters were here because of her, threatening innocent people because of what she was. Mobilize the guard, Kyle said. Full tactical response. I want... No. Lena's voice cut through his orders. I'll go. Absolutely not. Kyle rounded on her. That's exactly what they want. They'll kill you or capture you the moment you're outside these walls. They'll kill those children if I don't. Lena's hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. This is my fault, Kyle. Those people are in danger because of me. I can't hide behind your guards while innocent wolves die. You can, and you will. I'm not letting you walk into a trap. Then come with me. Lena stepped closer, her eyes locked on his. We go together. You bring your guards, I bring my silver fur, and we show these hunters exactly what happens when they threaten your kingdom. Lena, I'm done being protected. I'm done hiding. Lena's voice rose, filled with all the frustration and fear and determination that had been building since the Palomar. You told me I needed to learn what I'm capable of. You told me heart makes a queen. Well, my heart is telling me that I can't let people suffer because of what I am. So either you support me or you lock me in this room. But if you lock me in here, you prove Vivian right, that I'm too weak, too much of a liability, too ordinary to stand beside you. Kale stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly he smiled, fierce and proud, and a little bit feral. You're anything but ordinary, he said. Fine. We do this together. But you follow my lead, you stay close, and if I tell you to run, you run. Understood? Understood. 20 minutes later, Lena stood in the palace armory while Sarah helped her into light armor designed for shifters, flexible leather that would stretch during transformation, reinforced with plates at vital areas. You don't have to do this, Sarah said quietly, tightening a strap across Lena's chest. Kyle's guards can handle the hunters without you. No, they can't. Not without casualties. Lena tested the armor's range of motion, wincing as her still-healing ribs protested. The hunters want me. If I don't show up, they'll start killing hostages to draw me out. At least this way, I control when and how I engage. You sound like you've been doing this for years instead of days. I've been underestimated my entire life. I know what it's like when people think you're not a threat. Lena met Sarah's eyes. The hunters are expecting a scared new wolf who doesn't know how to fight. Let's show them what happens when they're wrong. They moved out as a unit. Kale in the lead with 20 of his best guards, Lena at his side, Sarah and Marcus flanking them. The palace halls were eerily silent, every wolf indoors and watching from windows as their king marched toward a confrontation that could define the kingdom's future. The lower city spread out below the palace in concentric circles of stone buildings and narrow streets. Normally it would be bustling with activity even at night, but now it was a ghost town. Everyone had taken shelter, leaving the streets empty except for the hunters. They were positioned in the main square, their black tactical gear stark against the pale stone. And in the center, kneeling with silver collars around their necks, were the hostages, a young couple and their 3 children, the oldest maybe 10. The lead hunter stood in front of them, a crossbow aimed at the mother's head. When he saw Kael's group approaching, he smiled. "King Varin, how gracious of you to join us." His voice echoed across the square. "And you brought the silver wolf. Perfect." "Release the hostages," Kael said, his voice carrying absolute authority. "You have 30 seconds to comply before my guards tear you apart." Brave words for a king who's outnumbered and outgunned. The hunter gestured, and more figures emerged from surrounding buildings. Not 50 hunters, but at least 100, all armed with silver weapons. "We've been planning this for months, ever since we learned the silver wolf might still exist. And now here she is, walking right into our trap like a gift." "You made a mistake coming here," Kael growled. "This is protected territory. You violated treaties that have stood for centuries. Even if you somehow manage to capture her, you'll never leave this kingdom alive." "Maybe not, but we'll leave rich." The hunter's eyes fixed on Lena. "There are collectors who'll pay 50 million for a living silver wolf. Enough money to set up every man here for life, worth dying for, I'd say."
"She's worth more than you could imagine," Kael said softly. "But not as a trophy, as the future queen of this kingdom. And queens don't kneel to hunters." He shifted, a blur of motion that ended with his black wolf form launching toward the nearest group of hunters. His guards followed instantly, the square erupting into chaos. Lena didn't hesitate. She shifted mid-run, her silver wolf form blazing like moonlight as she charged toward the hostages.
The lead hunter fired his crossbow, but Lena was already moving, the bolt whistling past her ear. She hit him like a freight train, jaws closing around his weapon arm and crushing the bones to powder. He screamed and fell, and Lena was already moving to the next hunter, then the next, cutting a path through them like they were nothing. Her ribs screamed in protest. Her shoulder burned where Darius's teeth had torn it, but she pushed the pain aside and fought. This was what Vivienne didn't understand. This was what made her more than just a silver bloodline. She was fighting for people she'd never met, protecting a kingdom she'd barely seen, standing beside a king who'd given her a choice and trusted her to make the right one. She was choosing to be brave, choosing to be strong, choosing to be more than ordinary. A hunter managed to loop a silver chain around her neck, and agony exploded through her body. The metal burned like acid, sapping her strength, trying to force her wolf back down. Lena heard herself whimper, felt her legs start to buckle. Then Kael was there, his massive black wolf tearing the hunter away and snapping the chain with his jaws. He stood over Lena protectively, snarling a warning that made even the bravest hunters hesitate. Lena forced herself back to her feet. Together, they fought their way to the hostages. Sarah had already removed their collars and was hustling them toward safety, while Marcus and the other guards formed a defensive perimeter. "Fall back!" the lead hunter screamed, clutching his shattered arm. "Retreat! Retreat!" The hunters scattered, disappearing into the shadows, leaving behind weapons and wounded comrades. Kael's guards pursued, capturing those too injured to run. Lena shifted back to human form, accepting a cloak from one of the guards. Her entire body was shaking with exhaustion and pain, but she was standing. The hostages were safe. The hunters were routed. They'd won. The square slowly filled with wolves emerging from their hiding places, cautious at first, then with growing confidence. They stared at Lena with expressions she'd never seen directed at her before. Awe, respect, gratitude. A young girl, maybe 8 years old, with golden eyes and dark curls, broke away from her mother and ran to Lena, throwing her arms around her waist. "You saved us,"
the girl whispered. The silver wolf saved us. Lena's throat tightened. She knelt down carefully, meeting the girl's eyes. Are you okay? Did they hurt you? They were scary, but you were scarier. The girl smiled, gap-toothed and fearless. You're really the silver wolf? The one from the stories? I guess I am. That's so cool. The girl hugged her again, then ran back to her parents, who were watching with tears streaming down their faces. Kyle appeared at Lena's side, shifting back to human form. There was blood on his face, not his own, and his eyes were still carrying the wolf's intensity. But when he looked at Lena, they softened. You did well, he said quietly. Better than well. You were magnificent. We did well. Lena leaned against him, too exhausted to care about propriety. Together.
The crowd around them had grown larger, wolves from all over the lower city gathering to see the silver wolf who'd fought to protect them. Lena could hear whispers spreading through the crowd, feel the shift in how they looked at her. She wasn't just a legend anymore. She wasn't just the king's mate or a political complication. She was someone who'd stood up when it mattered, someone who'd fought for them, someone who'd proven she belonged here. Counselor Thorne pushed through the crowd, her ice-chip eyes assessing the scene with practiced efficiency. When she reached Kyle and Lena, she did something Lena never expected. She bowed. Not a casual nod, but a full formal bow that bent her spine and lowered her eyes, the kind of bow reserved for royalty. The council acknowledges your courage, Silver Wolf, Thorne said, her voice carrying across the square. You risked yourself to protect our people. You fought with honor. You've earned your place in this kingdom. The crowd erupted in howls, thousands of voices raised in recognition, in welcome, in acceptance. Lena felt tears stinging her eyes. Just 3 days ago, she'd been ordinary Lena Harrow, filing clerk, predictable, forgettable. Now she was standing in a square full of wolves who were howling her name, acknowledging her as one of their own. Vivian stood at the edge of the crowd, her expression unreadable. For a long moment, she and Lena locked eyes. Then slowly, deliberately, Vivian bowed her head in acknowledgement. It wasn't surrender, it wasn't friendship, but it was recognition that the game had changed, that Lena wasn't going to be scared away or convinced she wasn't worthy. Kael's hand found Lena's, their fingers intertwining. The mate mark on her shoulder pulsed with warmth that spread through her entire body. Welcome home, my queen, he said softly, so only she could hear. And for the first time since the Palomar restaurant, Lena truly believed she was home. The howls echoed through the square for what felt like hours, a chorus of acceptance that washed over Lena like a breaking wave. She stood beside Kael, his hand warm in hers, and felt something shift deep inside her chest. Not the wolf, but something more fundamental. The certainty that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. But the celebration was short-lived. Marcus appeared at Kael's shoulder, his expression grim despite the victory around them. Your Majesty, we need to move inside, now. Kael's body tensed immediately, his king's instincts recognizing danger even in triumph. What is it? The hunters we captured. One of them is talking. Marcus's gold eyes flicked to Lena. You need to hear what he's saying. They moved quickly back to the palace, the crowd parting with newfound reverence as the silver wolf passed through. Lena could feel their eyes on her, grateful, awed, but also expectant. She'd proven herself tonight, but that also meant they would expect more from her. Always more. The interrogation room was deep in the palace's lower levels, carved from the same black stone as the exterior walls. The hunter sat chained to a chair with silver restraints that kept him weak and compliant. His arm, the one Lena had shattered, hung at an awkward angle, hastily bandaged but clearly causing him agony. He looked up when they entered, and Lena saw genuine fear flash across his face when his eyes landed on her. The silver wolf, he whispered. They said you were magnificent. They didn't say you were terrifying. Talk, Kael said flatly, taking a position that put himself between Lena and the hunter. Marcus says you have information. Start providing it, or I'll let her finish what she started in the square. The hunter swallowed hard. There's more coming. Tonight was just the first wave. When we fail to report in, they'll send the second team. And the third. And they won't stop until they have her, or until everyone involved is dead. Who is they? Lena asked, stepping out from behind Kyle despite his protective stance. Who's paying you to hunt me? I don't know names. We don't get names. The hunter's eyes were desperate now, seeking any mercy he could find. But I know it's someone with serious money and serious connections. Someone who's been collecting shifters for years, buying them, studying them, experimenting on them. They have a facility somewhere, big operation, military-grade security. They want you because you're the rarest specimen they've ever had a chance to acquire. Ice spread through Lena's veins. Specimen. You're talking about me like I'm an animal to be studied. To them, that's exactly what you are. The hunter's voice dropped. Look, I'm just a contractor. I needed the money. But I've seen what happens to the shifters they capture. They don't get treated well. They get dissected, tested, broken down until there's nothing left. If they get their hands on you, they won't. Kyle's voice was absolute zero. How many teams are coming? At least 3 more that I know of, maybe 50 hunters each, all equipped with advanced silver weapons, tranquilizers, containment protocols specifically designed for high-value targets. The hunter leaned forward as much as his chains would allow. You can't fight them all. They'll overwhelm your defenses eventually. Your only chance is to give them what they want or evacuate the Silver Wolf before they breach the border again. Neither of those things is going to happen, Lena said quietly. The wolf inside her was growling, sensing the threat, ready to fight. Tell us about the facility. Where it is. How to find it. I told you, I don't know. You know something. Lena crouched down so she was eye level with the hunter, and she let just enough of the wolf show in her gaze that her eyes began to glow amber. You've been there. You've delivered prisoners there. You know how to find it. The hunter stared at her, and she saw the moment his resistance crumbled. North, about 300 miles north of here, in the mountain range near the border. It's built into a valley, hidden from aerial surveillance. You'd need coordinates, access codes, and a death wish to get inside. Give Marcus the coordinates, Kyle said. Everything you know about the facility's layout, security, personnel, and pray to whatever you believe in that the information is accurate, because if it's not, you'll spend the rest of your very short life in a silver cage wishing you'd been more helpful. The hunter nodded frantically, and Marcus pulled out a tablet to record the details. Kale gestured for Lena to follow him out of the room, leading her to a small study nearby where they could speak privately. You're thinking about going after them, Kyle said as soon as the door closed. It wasn't a question. They're not going to stop. You heard him. They'll keep sending teams until they capture me or destroy this kingdom trying. Lena paced the small room, her mind racing. But if we take out the facility, if we destroy their operation and rescue whoever they're holding prisoner, we remove the threat at its source. You're talking about a military assault on a heavily fortified position 300 miles into human territory. It's suicide. So is sitting here waiting for them to overwhelm us? Lena stopped pacing, meeting his eyes. Kale, I can't let innocent people suffer because these collectors want to add me to their trophy case. And I won't let your kingdom become a battlefield because I'm too scared to take the fight to them. This isn't about fear. It's about strategy. Kyle ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in every line of his body. Even if we could mobilize a strike force large enough to breach the facility, we'd be declaring open war on the humans. The treaties that keep us hidden, that protect our people, they'd all be voided. We'd have human militaries hunting us across the continent. Then we go quietly. A small team, surgical strike, in and out before anyone knows we were there. Lena's mind was already working through possibilities. I've seen enough action movies to know how this works. This isn't a movie, Lena. This is real life with real consequences. But Kyle's expression had shifted from outright refusal to consideration. Though you're not entirely wrong, a small, skilled team might be able to infiltrate the facility, gather intelligence, potentially sabotage their operation, and rescue any prisoners. And rescue prisoners, Kale agreed. But I'm not sending you into that kind of danger, not after you fought hunters tonight with barely healed ribs. You're not sending me anywhere. I'm volunteering. Lena stepped closer, holding his gaze. This is my fight, Kyle. These people are hunting me, threatening your kingdom because of what I am. I can't hide behind your guards and let other people risk their lives to protect me. That's not who I am. That's not who I want to be.
Kael studied her face for a long moment, then quietly, "You've changed. In less than a week, you've gone from someone who'd never fought anyone to someone willing to assault a military facility to protect people you barely know. The old Lena died in that restaurant, the one who waited patiently and never took risks and let people like Marcus tell her she wasn't good enough. Lena's voice was steady, certain. The wolf woke up something in me, not just power, but purpose. And my purpose is to protect this kingdom, to be the queen they need, not just the mate Bond says I'm supposed to be." "You're already the queen they need," Kael said softly. He pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. "You proved that tonight. But being queen also means knowing when to delegate, when to trust others to fight battles you can't win alone. Then come with me, you and your best warriors. We'll do this together like we did tonight. If I leave the kingdom, the council will have my head. And if anything happens to you while I'm supposed to be protecting you..." He stopped, jaw tight. "I can't risk you, Lena. Not when the mate bond means losing you would destroy me." The raw honesty in his voice made Lena's chest ache. She understood what he wasn't saying, that the bond wasn't just spiritual connection, it was survival. If she died, part of him would die too. The thought should have felt like a cage, but instead it felt like being valued in a way she'd never experienced before. "I have a gift," Lena said suddenly, remembering what Kael had told her about her rare bloodline. "You said silver wolves had abilities beyond normal shifters. What are they?" Kael pulled back slightly, studying her. "The legends say they could sense bonds, not just mate bonds, but any supernatural connection between creatures. They could see the threads that tied people together, and more importantly, they could break those threads when needed." Break supernatural bonds. Lena's mind raced. Like the kind someone might use to control prisoners, to keep them compliant? Theoretically, yes, though no one alive has actually seen it done. Then maybe it's time someone tried. Lena felt the wolf stirring inside her, responding to the idea. "If we can free the prisoners, get them to fight with us, we turn the facility's own captives against them." Kael was quiet for a long moment, clearly running scenarios, calculating risks. Finally, "The council meets in an hour to discuss our response to the attack. If you're serious about this, you'll need to convince them. And Lena, they're going to fight you every step of the way. They'll say you're too inexperienced, too valuable to risk, that this plan is reckless. They wouldn't be entirely wrong. No, but reckless plans sometimes work when conservative ones fail." Kael's expression shifted into something fierce and proud. "Come on. Let's go convince a room full of ancient wolves that a week-old shifter should lead an assault on a human military facility. This should be entertaining." The council chamber was a circular room at the heart of the palace, with walls carved from translucent stone that seemed to glow with internal light. 7 chairs arranged in a semicircle faced a raised platform where Kael stood when addressing the council formally. Tonight, every seat was filled, and the tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Councillor Thorne sat in the center position, her white hair braided with silver thread that caught the light. The other councillors flanked her, 5 men and Vivian, all wearing expressions ranging from concern to barely concealed hostility. Lena stood beside Kael on the platform, acutely aware that she was wearing borrowed clothes still stained with blood from the fight. She probably looked like exactly what Vivian had accused her of being, chaos wrapped in silver fur. "The council acknowledges your victory tonight," Thorne began, her voice formal and precise. "The hunters were routed, the hostages rescued, valuable intelligence gathered. However, the threat remains. We must discuss our response." I have a proposal," Lena said, before anyone else could speak. She felt Kael's surprise beside her, but she pushed forward. "We take the fight to them, small strike force, hit the facility where they are holding prisoners and destroy their operation before they can send more hunters." The silence that followed was deafening. Then Vivian laughed, not with humor, but with derision. "You've been a shifter for 4 days and you're proposing we start a war with humans? Is there no limit to your arrogance?" "It's not arrogance, it's strategy." Lena kept her voice level despite the anger burning in her chest. "They're coming for me whether we like it or not. We can sit here and wait for them to overwhelm our defenses, or we can strike first and end the threat permanently. And risk exposing our entire kingdom to human retaliation," one of the male counselors interjected.
The treaties that protect us exist for a reason. The moment we attack a human facility, those treaties become void. The treaties are already meaningless if humans are willing to violate our borders to hunt us, Lena shot back. How many more attacks before you accept that hiding and hoping for the best isn't working? We've survived for thousands of years by avoiding open conflict, Thorne said coldly. Your proposal would undo centuries of careful diplomacy in a single night of violence. My proposal would save lives. Lena stepped forward, channeling every ounce of conviction she possessed. There are shifters being held in that facility, being experimented on, broken down and studied like lab rats. We have the power to free them, to destroy the operation that's hunting us. And you want to sit here debating treaties while our people suffer? Those prisoners aren't our people, Vivian said sharply. They're shifters who were careless enough to get caught. We don't risk the kingdom for individuals who failed to protect themselves. The words hit Lena like a slap. This was the divide she'd sensed from the beginning. Wolves who valued the collective over the individual, who would sacrifice anyone who couldn't keep up. It was the same logic that had let Marcus dismiss her as ordinary, that had nearly convinced her she wasn't worthy of standing in this room. Then what about me? Lena asked quietly. If I get captured because we didn't act, will you write me off too? Tell yourselves I was careless, that I failed to protect myself? That's different, Thorne said, though her expression suggested she knew how weak the argument was. You're the silver wolf. My value is what? A symbol? A weapon? A trophy for the next collector who gets lucky? Lena's voice rose despite her efforts to stay calm. I'm not more valuable than any other shifter in that facility. I'm just lucky that I transformed in a place where people were willing to protect me. Those prisoners deserve the same chance. Kale's hand found the small of her back, a subtle show of support that didn't go unnoticed by the council. Lena raises a valid point. Our strength has always come from protecting our own. If we abandon prisoners because rescuing them is difficult, we lose what makes us different from the humans hunting us. Your Majesty, with respect, you're letting your mate Bond cloud your judgment, Vivian said, her green eyes flashing. This isn't about protecting our own. This is about a newly turned wolf with no training and no experience proposing a mission that could destroy everything we've built. I'm proposing a solution, Lena corrected, one that removes an active threat to this kingdom while rescuing wolves who deserve our help. If that's not worth fighting for, then what are we doing here? What's the point of being the legendary silver wolf if I can't use that power to protect people? The point is to survive, Thorne said flatly, to ensure the bloodline continues, to be a symbol of hope for future generations. Symbols don't save lives, actions do. Lena met each counselor's eyes in turn. I understand the risks. I understand that I'm asking people to put themselves in danger. But I'm also asking you to trust that sometimes the most dangerous path is the only path forward. We can hide and hope the hunters give up, or we can show them exactly what happens when you threaten a kingdom of wolves. The council members exchanged glances, silent communication passing between them. Finally, one of the older male counselors, a man named Brennan with scars crossing his weathered face, spoke. What exactly are you proposing? Specifics, not ideals. Lena took a breath, grateful for the opening. Small team, maybe 10 wolves. We infiltrate the facility using the coordinates the captured hunter provided. I use my ability to sense and break bonds to free the prisoners. We gather whatever intelligence we can about who's funding this operation. Then we destroy the facility and evacuate before reinforcements arrive. And if you can't break the bonds? If your untested ability fails? Brennan's eyes were sharp, assessing. Then we adapt, fight our way out. But I don't think it will fail. Lena touched her shoulder where the mate mark burned beneath her shirt. I can feel bonds. I've been feeling them since I transformed. The connection between Kael and me. The pack bonds connecting every wolf in this kingdom. They're like threads I can see when I concentrate. If I can sense them, I believe I can manipulate them. Belief isn't certainty, Vivian said, and you're asking us to bet lives on an unproven ability. I'm asking you to bet on me. Lena's voice was steady, absolute. The silver wolf you all claimed was legendary. The future queen you acknowledged in the square tonight. I'm asking you to trust that I can do this because the alternative is waiting here until the hunters succeed in taking me. And when they do,
this kingdom loses its symbol of hope permanently. The silence stretched out, heavy with implications.
Lena could feel Kael's tension beside her, could sense the council weighing her words against decades of conservative policy. Finally, Thorn spoke. If we agree to this, and I'm not saying we will, you would need the best warriors we have. Wolves with experience in combat and infiltration. And you would need someone to lead who knows what they're doing.
I'll lead, Kael said immediately. No. Lena's hand found his, squeezing gently. You're the king. You stay here and protect the kingdom.
I'll lead the mission.
Absolutely not. She's right. Darius's voice cut through the room, startling everyone. He stood in the doorway, leaning against the frame with his arms crossed. The king can't leave the kingdom for a mission this dangerous, but the Silver Wolf can, should even. Let her prove she's more than just a pretty bloodline. Lena turned to face Kael's brother, surprised to find something that might have been respect in his storm gray eyes.
You'd support this? Kael asked, clearly as shocked as Lena. I'd support letting her try. Darius pushed off the door frame, walking into the chamber with the confident grace of someone who'd never been told he didn't belong. She fought me and drew blood. She fought hunters tonight and won. Maybe she's reckless and inexperienced, but she's also brave enough to take risks when everyone else wants to play it safe. He looked at Lena.
Besides, if she fails and gets herself killed, at least she'll die doing something meaningful instead of hiding behind guards while the kingdom falls apart. Your encouragement is overwhelming, Lena said dryly. Darius grinned, fierce and feral. I'll go with her. Lead the strike team. Make sure she doesn't do anything too stupid. You're volunteering to protect the Silver Wolf? Vivian's tone was incredulous. I'm volunteering to see if she's worth all the fuss everyone's making. Darius's eyes glinted gold. And maybe blow up a human facility while I'm at it. Sounds more interesting than another council meeting. Thorn looked between Lena and Darius, her expression calculating. If the Crown Prince leads the mission with the Silver Wolf as his second, if we send our best warriors and plan meticulously, then perhaps, this has a chance of success. You're actually considering this? Vivian stood abruptly.
Thorn, we can't seriously be...
We're seriously considering all options, Thorn said coldly.
Because Lena is right about one thing. Hiding and hoping hasn't protected us. The hunters found the border. They took hostages. They'll keep coming. Better to fight on our terms than theirs. She turned her ice chip eyes to Lena. You have 24 hours to prepare. Choose your team carefully. Study the intelligence we have. And understand this. If you fail, if you expose our kingdom or get our warriors killed, the council will hold you personally responsible.
I understand, Lena said.
Good. Thorn's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Then go. Prove to us that the Silver Wolf is more than just a legend. The next 24 hours passed in a blur of preparation. Lena worked with Darius to select their team, Sarah for her technical skills, Marcus for his tactical experience, and 6 other warriors chosen for their combat prowess and ability to operate independently. Kael provided intelligence briefings, weapons, equipment designed specifically for infiltration. Through it all, Lena felt the weight of what she was about to do settling on her shoulders. This wasn't just a fight in the palace courtyard or defending against hunters in the streets. This was a coordinated assault on a military facility defended by people who had spent years perfecting ways to capture and control shifters. But she also felt something else building inside her, not just the wolf's strength, but her own determination. She'd spent 25 years being ordinary, being dismissed, being told she wasn't good enough. Now she had a chance to prove all of them wrong, to become someone who saved lives instead of just filing paperwork about them. The night before the mission, Kael found her standing on the balcony outside her room, watching the moon rise over the kingdom. Can't sleep? He asked, joining her at the railing. Too much adrenaline. Too many what-ifs. Lena leaned into him when his arm wrapped around her shoulders. What if I can't break the bonds? What if my ability doesn't work the way I think it will? Then you adapt. That's what you've been doing since the moment you transformed. Kael's voice was quiet but certain. You've faced every impossible situation thrown at you and found a way through. This will be no different. You're very confident for someone who thinks this mission is suicide.
I never said it was suicide. I said it was dangerous. There's a difference. He turned her to face him, his storm-gray eyes serious. Lena, I meant what I said in the council chamber. You've changed this kingdom in less than a week. You've shown wolves who've been playing it safe for decades that sometimes you have to take risks to protect what matters. Win or lose tomorrow, you've already proven you belong here. I need to win. Lena's voice was fierce. I need to bring everyone home safely and destroy that facility. I need to prove I'm not just chaos wrapped in silver fur. You're not chaos. You're change, and change is exactly what this kingdom needs.
Kale's hand cupped her face, thumb brushing across her cheekbone. Come back to me, Lena. Fight as hard as you need to, save as many lives as you can, but come back. I will. She stood on her toes and kissed him, fierce and desperate, and full of promises she wasn't entirely sure she could keep. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, she whispered, I have too much to come back to. They left at dawn. 10 wolves traveling in 2 vehicles designed to look like ordinary cargo vans, but reinforced with armor and equipped with enough weapons to start a small war. Darius drove the lead vehicle with Lena in the passenger seat, while Marcus commanded the second van with Sarah and the other warriors. The journey north took 6 hours, traveling through increasingly remote terrain until they reached the mountain range the captured hunter had described. They abandoned the vehicles 5 miles from the facility, shifting to wolf form for the final approach. Lena's silver fur gleamed in the afternoon sunlight filtering through the trees, making stealth nearly impossible. Sarah had prepared a solution, a dark dye that temporarily masked the luminescent quality of her coat. It felt wrong, hiding what she was, but Lena understood the necessity. They approached the facility from above, using the mountain's natural terrain to avoid detection. When they finally caught sight of their target, Lena's breath caught in her throat. The facility was massive, a complex of buildings built into the valley floor with towers at each corner and walls topped with razor wire. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter, cameras swept in coordinated patterns. And buried beneath it all, according to the hunter's intelligence, were holding cells where prisoners were kept in silver cages that prevented them from shifting. How do we get in? Lena asked through the mental link shifters shared in wolf form. Darius's response was immediate. We don't. We create a distraction at the main gate while you and Sarah infiltrate through the ventilation system on the eastern side. Once you're inside, you locate the holding cells and start freeing prisoners. The rest of us hit them from the outside once you have reinforcements from within. That's a terrible plan, Sarah said. You got a better one? Not really, but I wanted to make sure we all acknowledged how terrible this is before we commit. Lena would have laughed if she wasn't so terrified. Instead, she focused on the facility below, reaching out with her new senses. And there, she felt them. Threads of connection that weren't natural, weren't chosen. Bonds that had been forced onto shifters to control them, to keep them compliant and docile. Dozens of threads. Maybe hundreds. I can feel them, Lena said. The prisoners. The bonds controlling them. They're in the lower levels, concentrated in one area. Can you break them from here? Marcus asked. No, I need to be closer, need to see the threads clearly. Lena shifted back to human form, accepting the tactical gear Sarah handed her. Give me 30 minutes. If I'm not out by then. We're coming in after you, Darius finished. No arguments. Lena nodded and followed Sarah down the mountainside, moving with a silence she'd never possessed before the wolf. They reached the eastern wall without triggering alarms, and Sarah made quick work of the ventilation grate with tools that looked like they belonged in a spy movie. The shaft was barely large enough for Lena to squeeze through, but she forced herself forward, following Sarah's whispered directions. They emerged in a storage room that smelled of chemicals and fear. Through the walls, Lena could hear voices, guards discussing shift rotations, scientists reviewing test results. And below, from the levels beneath their feet, she heard something else. Whimpering, crying, the sound of beings who'd given up hope. This way, Lena whispered, following the threads she could sense pulling her deeper into the facility. They moved through corridors that looked more like a hospital than a prison. Sterile white walls, fluorescent lighting, doors with small windows that revealed exam rooms filled with equipment Lena didn't want to understand. But she could smell blood, old and new. And she could feel the threads getting stronger, more concentrated. Finally, they reached a heavy door marked Subject Containment. Sarah worked on the electronic lock while Lena kept watch, her heart pounding so hard she was sure someone would hear it. The lock disengaged with a soft click. Beyond the door was a nightmare. Rows of cages lined both sides of a long room, each one barely large enough to hold a person. Silver bars gleamed under harsh lights, and in every cage was a shifter, some in human form, some stuck mid-transformation, all wearing collars that glowed with the sickly light of binding magic. They looked up when Lena entered, and she saw her own horror reflected in dozens of pairs of eyes. Some were children, some were elderly. All of them had been broken down, piece by piece, until they were barely functioning. "Who?" one of them started, then stopped, eyes going wide. "Silver Fur. You're the—" "I'm here to get you out." Lena approached the nearest cage, studying the collar around the shifter's neck. The bond was visible to her now, a thread of sick green energy that wrapped around the wolf inside, crushing it down, preventing transformation. "This is going to hurt, but it won't last long." She reached out, not with her hands, but with something deeper. The ability she'd been trusting would work. Her consciousness touched the thread, and she felt its wrongness immediately. This wasn't a natural bond. It was forced, cruel, designed to cause maximum pain with minimum care. Lena wrapped her will around the thread and pulled. The bond snapped like a rotten rope. The shifter in the cage gasped, doubling over as the collar went dark. Then, slowly, he straightened, and Lena saw the wolf rising in his eyes, not controlled anymore, but free. "Holy shit," Sarah breathed. "It actually worked." "Help me with the others," Lena said, already moving to the next cage. They worked systematically, Lena breaking bonds while Sarah picked locks on the silver cages. One by one, the prisoners emerged, weak, terrified, but free. Some were crying. Some were too shocked to react. All of them stared at Lena like she was a miracle made flesh. "Can you fight?" Lena asked a woman who looked like she'd been here the longest. "I can fight." The woman's voice was hoarse from disuse, but her eyes burned with rage. "I can tear this place apart brick by brick." "Good. That's exactly what we're going to do." An alarm shattered the moment, loud and piercing, echoing through the facility. Guards shouted commands. Boots thundered in hallways. "They know we're here," Sarah said, already moving toward the door. "We need to move. Now." "Get them armed," Lena ordered, gesturing to the racks of weapons lining the walls. Weapons that had probably been taken from previous prisoners. "Anyone who can fight, fights. Anyone who can't, stays in the center of the group, and we protect them." The prisoners moved with desperate efficiency, grabbing weapons, forming defensive positions. Lena shifted to her silver wolf form, the dye finally wearing off so her fur blazed like moonlight in the harsh fluorescent lighting. The door burst open and guards poured in, at least 20, all armed with silver weapons designed specifically for shifters. Lena didn't hesitate. She charged forward, her wolf form a blur of silver and fury. Guards fell before her like wheat before a scythe. Behind her, the freed prisoners fought with the desperate strength of people who'd been caged too long, who'd been broken and studied and told they were nothing more than specimens. They tore through the guards, leaving no survivors. Lena felt savage satisfaction at the fear in their enemies' eyes, at the realization that they'd underestimated what happened when you caged wolves and then gave them a chance to break free. "Upper levels!" Sarah shouted over the chaos. "Darius is engaging at the main gate. We need to reach him before they lock down the entire facility." They fought their way up through level after level, gathering more prisoners from other holding cells, breaking more bonds, building an army of furious shifters who'd found their second chance at freedom. By the time they reached ground level, their group had swelled to over 60 wolves, all ready to destroy everything this facility represented. Darius met them in the main courtyard, his dark gray wolf form covered in blood that definitely wasn't his. The rest of their strike team flanked him, having fought their way in from the main gate. "About time," he said through the mental link. "Was starting to think you'd decided to redecorate down there." "Had some bonds to break," Lena responded. "How bad is it?" "Reinforcements are maybe 10 minutes out. We need to destroy the research data and evacuate before they arrive with heavy weapons." "Sarah, can you wipe their systems?" "Already on it." Sarah was hunched over a terminal, fingers flying across keys. "Give me 5 minutes, and every piece of data they have on shifters goes up in smoke." Those 5 minutes felt like hours. The freed prisoners formed a defensive perimeter while Sarah worked, while Darius coordinated their evacuation route, while Lena stood watch and felt the threads of freedom spreading through wolves who'd thought they'd never be anything but test subjects again. Done! Sarah slammed her hand on the keyboard with finality. Database wiped. Backups corrupted. This place has nothing left except empty cages. Then let's make sure they can't build new ones. Darius shifted to human form, long enough to arm the explosives Marcus had brought. Everyone out. We've got maybe 90 seconds before this whole facility becomes a crater. They ran. 60 freed prisoners and 10 warriors, all in wolf form, all moving with the desperate speed of people who'd just pulled off the impossible. Behind them, the facility erupted in a series of explosions that lit up the valley like a second sun. Lena didn't look back. She just kept running, the freed prisoners running with her, all of them heading toward a future that hadn't existed an hour ago. They made it back to the kingdom just after midnight. The freed prisoners were taken immediately to the medical wing for treatment and evaluation. The strike team gathered in Kael's study for debriefing, exhausted and battered but alive. 0 casualties on our side, Marcus reported. 63 prisoners freed, complete destruction of the facility and all research data. As far as military operations go, that's as close to perfect as it gets. Kael looked at Lena, who was slumped in a chair with Sarah's head on her shoulder. The younger woman had fallen asleep the moment they'd stopped moving. How are you feeling? Like I've been hit by a truck. Like I just changed the world. Like... Lena stopped, searching for the right words. Like... I finally know who I'm supposed to be. And who's that? Someone who fights. Someone who protects. Someone who uses whatever power they have to make things better. She met his eyes. You're queen, if you'll still have me. Kael crossed the room and pulled her to her feet, gently, so as not to wake Sarah. When he kissed her, it was with the desperate relief of someone who'd spent hours thinking they might never get the chance again. Always, he said against her lips. I will always have you. 3 months later, Lena stood on the palace balcony watching the sunrise paint the kingdom in shades of gold and amber. She wore robes of silver that matched her wolf fur, embroidered with the crescent symbol that marked her as queen. Her shoulder, the one that had burned with the mate mark, no longer hurt. The scar was silver now, permanent, beautiful in its own way. Behind her, she could hear the palace stirring to life. Freed prisoners who'd chosen to stay in the kingdom were being integrated into the community. The council had been restructured to include younger voices like Sarah and some of the rescued wolves. Vivian had grudgingly accepted her defeat and now served as Lena's advisor on political matters, their relationship one of professional respect rather than friendship, but functional nonetheless. And Darius, surprisingly, had become one of Lena's fiercest defenders, claiming that anyone brave enough to blow up a human facility deserved to be queen. Kael found her there, as he always did in the early morning. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, his chin resting on top of her head. What are you thinking about? He asked. How different everything is from 6 months ago. How I used to think my life was over when Marcus walked away. Lena leaned back into his warmth. He was right, in a way. That life did end. But something so much better took its place. Any regrets? Only that I didn't know about the wolf sooner, that I wasted so many years being ordinary when I could have been... She gestured at the kingdom spread below them. This. You were never ordinary, Lena Harrow. You just needed the right circumstances to show you what you were capable of. Lena smiled, feeling the truth of it in her bones. The girl who'd sat in the Palomar restaurant waiting for a proposal that never came was gone. In her place stood a queen who'd fought hunters, freed prisoners, and helped reshape a kingdom into something stronger. She touched her stomach, where new life was just beginning to make itself known. A silver wolf heir, the healers had confirmed yesterday. The first in 300 years. Ready to tell them? Kael asked, his hand covering hers. Tonight, at the council meeting. Lena turned in his arms, looking up at the man who'd given her a choice when he could have demanded obedience, who'd seen strength in her when everyone else saw chaos. But first, I want to enjoy this moment. Just us, watching the sunrise, knowing we survived everything they threw at us. We did more than survive, Kael said softly. We won. And as the sun crested the mountains, painting their kingdom in light, Lena understood that this was what victory looked like. Not a single moment of triumph, but 1,000 small victories that added up to a completely changed life. She was no longer the filing clerk Marcus had dismissed. She was no longer the scared girl who'd stumbled through her first transformation. She was Lena Harrow, the Silver Wolf, queen of the Shifter Kingdom. And she was exactly where she was meant to be.